The laughter started before Commander Elena Voss even reached the briefing room door. It rolled through the corridor of Naval Special Warfare Command like a wave, harsh and cutting, the kind of sound that strips dignity from its target. She recognized it immediately. She had heard it in a dozen different versions over the past 4 years, ever since the day she traded her combat boots for forearm crutches. Elena adjusted her grip on the crutches and pushed through the double doors. The briefing room fell silent for exactly 2 seconds. Then the laughter exploded again, louder this time, fueled by the sight of her entering their sacred space. 23 Navy SEALs turned to stare. Most looked away quickly, embarrassed. 5 did not. They leaned back in their chairs with arms crossed, smirks carved into their faces like scars. The tallest one, a lieutenant with shoulders broad enough to block a doorway, whispered something to the man beside him. Both laughed. Elena moved to the back row, her crutches making soft clicks against the polished floor. Each step required precision, a calculated shift of weight that she had perfected through 18 months of physical therapy. The sound seemed impossibly loud in the sudden quiet that followed her path through the room. Before we continue, drop a comment and let us know what state you're watching from. Maybe you have witnessed similar acts of courage where you are from. She reached the last row and lowered herself into a chair, propping her crutches against the wall. The metal gleamed under the fluorescent lights, standard issue forearm crutches with gray padding at the grips. They looked clinical, temporary, like she would put them away any day now and walk out of here on her own 2 feet. She would not. The doctors had made that clear 37 months ago. The lieutenant who had laughed stood up. He was younger than Elena by at least 5 years, with the kind of face that had never known real fear. His name tape read Shaw, Lieutenant Marcus Shaw. She did not know him, but she knew his type. Every SEAL team had one. The golden boy who believed his trident made him untouchable. Lieutenant Shaw, Elena said quietly, her voice carrying despite its softness. You're standing in my line of sight. Shaw turned to face her fully. The briefing has not started yet, he said. His tone suggested she had no business telling him anything. Maybe you are in the wrong room. The Wounded Warrior Support Group meets down the hall. 3 of his teammates laughed. The others shifted uncomfortably. One older petty officer, his face weathered by deployments Elena could only imagine, shook his head and looked at his boots. Elena met Shaw's eyes without blinking. I'm exactly where I need to be, Lieutenant. Shaw leaned against the front table, crossing his ankles in a show of casual disrespect. Let me guess. Diversity briefing? They send you around to inspire us with your story? Show us that anyone can be a SEAL, even if they cannot actually, operate anymore. The room temperature seemed to drop. Even Shaw's friends stopped smiling. The petty officer in the front row closed his eyes like he was bracing for impact. Elena kept her expression neutral. She had learned this skill in interrogation resistance training back when she could still run obstacle courses and fast rope from helicopters. Back when her body did what she told it to do without negotiation or compromise. I am here for a classified consultation, she said. That is all you need to know. Shaw pushed off from the table. Classified consultation, he repeated, drawing out the words mockingly. What could you possibly consult on? How to fill out medical retirement paperwork. How to accept that your career is over. The door at the front of the room opened. Every SEAL in the room snapped to attention. Elena remained seated, watching as a 3-star admiral entered, his uniform crisp enough to cut glass. Vice Admiral Morrison. She had served under him 6 years ago, before Mogadishu, before everything changed. Morrison's eyes swept the room and landed on Shaw, who had frozen mid-gesture, his hand still extended in Elena's direction. The Admiral's expression transformed from neutral to something darker, something that made Shaw take an involuntary step backward. The Admiral's jaw tightened. His gaze moved from Shaw to Elena, and for just a moment, something like pain crossed his face. Then it was gone, replaced by the iron composure of a man who had sent warriors into hell and lived with the consequences. Lieutenant Shaw, Morrison said, his voice quiet but carrying the weight of 3 decades in naval special warfare. Step outside. Now. Shaw's face went pale. He moved toward the door like a man walking to his execution, shoulders hunched. All his earlier arrogance evaporated. Morrison followed him, pausing at the threshold to look back at the room. "The rest of you, wait here. Do not move. Do not speak. And if I hear that anyone showed Commander Voss anything less than the respect her rank demands, you will answer to me personally. Is that clear?" 22 voices responded as one. "Yes, sir." The door closed behind them. Elena sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap. Around her, the SEALs remained at attention, but their eyes flickered toward her with new uncertainty. "Commander." They had not known. Shaw had seen the crutches and assumed she was nobody. He had made the oldest mistake in warfare. He had underestimated his opponent based on incomplete intelligence. In the hallway beyond the closed door, Admiral Morrison's voice rose just loud enough to penetrate the walls. The words were indistinct, but the tone was unmistakable. Shaw was receiving the kind of reprimand that ended careers or reshaped them completely. The petty officer who had shaken his head earlier turned slowly to face Elena. "Ma'am," he said, his voice rough with something that might have been shame, "I apologize for my teammates. Some of us forgot what the uniform means." Elena gave him a small nod. "No apology necessary, petty officer. People see what they expect to see. But you are a commander," he said. "We should have known. We should have shown proper respect regardless." She almost smiled. Rank had nothing to do with it. Respect was earned through action, not insignia. She had learned that truth in places these young warriors had only read about in after-action reports. She had earned her respect in ways she would never speak about unless ordered to do so. The door opened again. Admiral Morrison entered alone, his face unreadable. Shaw was nowhere to be seen. The admiral moved to the front of the room and surveyed the assembled SEALs like a general inspecting troops before battle. "Gentlemen," Morrison began, his hands clasped behind his back, "you are about to receive a briefing that will challenge everything you think you know about courage, sacrifice, and what it means to be a warrior. Some of you made assumptions today. Those assumptions were wrong. Catastrophically wrong." He turned to Elena. "Commander Voss, would you please join me at the front?" Elena reached for her crutches. The room watched in absolute silence as she stood, positioned the crutches, and made her way forward. Each step was measured, controlled, the product of countless hours of rehabilitation. She did not hurry. She did not apologize for the time it took. She simply moved with the same tactical precision she had once used to clear hostile buildings under enemy fire. When she reached the front, Morrison gestured to the chair beside his podium. She sat, leaning her crutches against the wall within easy reach. Morrison waited until she was settled before continuing. "What I am about to tell you is no longer classified as of 0800 this morning," he said. 5 years ago, in Mogadishu, a SEAL team conducted a hostage rescue operation that saved 52 American lives. The mission was deemed impossible by everyone who reviewed the tactical assessment. The compound was held by over 200 hostiles. Air support was 6 hours out. The hostages had 90 minutes before public execution was scheduled to begin. The room had gone utterly still. Every SEAL was listening now, their earlier discomfort forgotten in the face of a story they had never heard. Elena kept her eyes forward, her expression neutral, even as memories tried to surface like bodies in dark water. Morrison continued. The team leader made the decision to go in anyway. 8 operators against impossible odds. They breached the compound, cleared 17 rooms, and secured all 52 hostages with 0 friendly casualties. Then the compound started to collapse. An IED in the basement. 3 team members were trapped, including the team leader. Both legs shattered, spine damaged, unable to walk. A few of the SEALs had started to piece it together. Their eyes moved from Morrison to Elena and back again, disbelief warring with dawning understanding. The team leader ordered the others to evacuate the hostages and leave her behind, Morrison said. She would cover their withdrawal. For 11 minutes, from a position she could not abandon because she could not stand, she held off advancing enemy forces. When the quick reaction force finally reached her position, they found her unconscious, surrounded by 12 dead hostiles. Her weapon was empty. She had fought the last 4 with her hands and an improvised weapon made from debris. Morrison's voice grew quieter. 3 of her team did not make it home. Master Chief Rivera, Senior Chief Takahashi, Chief Petty Officer Williams. She carries their names every single day. And some of you laughed at her crutches. The silence in the room was absolute. Someone in the 3rd row had tears on his face. Admiral Morrison let the silence settle like snow on a battlefield. Elena watched the faces of the SEALs transform as understanding replaced ignorance. The petty officer in the front row stood straighter, his jaw set. 2 others had removed their ball caps, holding them against their chests as though standing before a memorial. Commander Voss declined the Navy Cross 3 times, Morrison said. She felt she did not deserve it while her teammates were dead. It took a direct order from the Chief of Naval Operations to make her accept the citation. Even then, she requested the ceremony be closed to press. No publicity. No recognition. She wanted to fade into the background and let others take credit for the mission's success. Elena kept her gaze fixed on the back wall. She could feel 22 pairs of eyes on her, assessing her with new understanding. This was exactly what she had wanted to avoid. The story, the attention, the inevitable weight of other people's expectations and guilt. Morrison turned to face her. Commander, these men need to hear the rest. They need to understand why you are here today. She met his eyes. The Admiral was asking, not ordering. He would respect her refusal if she gave it. But they both knew what was at stake. Shah's team was deploying in 72 hours to a situation that mirrored Mogadishu in ways that made her spine ache with phantom pain. Elena shifted in her chair and looked at the assembled SEALs. Very well, she said, but I will not romanticize what happened. War is not a story. It is a series of decisions made in chaos, and most of those decisions haunt you afterward. The room remained silent. She had their complete attention now. No makiri, no dismissed, just warriors waiting to learn from someone who had walked through fire and come out the other side scarred, but unbroken. Mogadishu, she began. 5 years ago, August 14th, we received intelligence that 47 American contractors were being held in a compound 12 kilometers outside the city. The terrorist cell holding them had already executed 2 hostages on video. They were threatening to kill 1 person every 6 hours until their demands were met. She paused, organizing her thoughts. The memories came in fragments, pieces of a nightmare she had reassembled 1,000 times in therapy. Command deemed a rescue operation too risky, she continued. The compound was reinforced concrete, 3 stories, estimated 200-plus hostiles. No viable approach that did not end with significant casualties on both sides. They were negotiating for a peaceful release. Those negotiations were going nowhere. One of the younger SEALs raised his hand tentatively. Morrison nodded permission to speak. Ma'am, the SEAL said, his voice respectful now. If command said no, how did you get authorization? Elena almost smiled. I did not, she said simply. My team and I conducted the operation without official sanction. We knew what would happen if we waited. We had all seen the videos. We understood the pattern. The terrorists were not negotiating in good faith. They were stalling while they moved the hostages to a location where recovery would be impossible. The room erupted in whispers. An unauthorized mission. That was career-ending territory, the kind of decision that led to courts-martial and dishonorable discharges. Elena waited for the murmurs to subside. Master Chief Rivera was my second in command, she said, her voice steady despite the tightness in her chest. He found the intelligence that located the compound, a local informant who owed him a favor from a previous deployment. The information was solid, but could not be verified through official channels. We had a 4-hour window. We took it. Morrison stepped forward. For the record, he said, the operation was retroactively authorized after its successful completion. Commander Voss and her team were cleared of any wrongdoing. In fact, they were commended for initiative under extraordinary circumstances. Elena nodded acknowledgement, but continued. We approached on foot. 8 of us. Full kit. Night vision. The compound was lit up like a stadium. Generators running. Guards on the perimeter. We counted 43 hostiles on the outside. We assumed at least twice that number inside. She closed her eyes briefly, seeing it again. The compound walls, white in the moonlight. Rivera's hand signals. The smell of diesel fuel and burning garbage. The moment before the breach, when everything was still possible, when all 8 of them were still breathing. We had planned for 3 entry points simultaneously, she said. Rivera's team took the south wall. Chief Takahashi took the east. I led the assault on the main entrance. The goal was speed and violence. Get inside before they could organize a defense. Locate the hostages. Extract before reinforcements arrived. How long did the initial breach take? The petty officer asked. 47 seconds from first breach to complete compound penetration, Elena replied. We caught them in shift change. Half the guards were eating. The other half were sleeping. We cleared the first floor in under 3 minutes. 17 hostiles down. 0 shots fired by our team. All suppressed weapons, close quarters combat. The SEALs were leaning forward now, absorbed in the tactical details. This was what they understood. The mechanics of violence. The precision required to move through chaos without becoming part of it. Second floor was different, Elena continued. They knew we were there by then. Barricaded doors. Concentrated fire. We lost the element of surprise. Chief Williams took a round through his shoulder. He kept fighting. We cleared 6 more rooms. Found the first group of hostages. 23 people locked in what used to be a storage area. She paused, remembering their faces. The terror. The disbelief when American operators appeared in the doorway. The elderly contractor who could not stop crying. We secured that group and pushed to the 3rd floor, she said. That is where we found the rest. 29 more hostages. But we also found something we did not expect. 5 children. The contractors' families. The intelligence had been incomplete. The room had gone deathly quiet again. Children changed everything. Every operator knew it. You could accept your own death. You could even accept civilian casualties in the abstract. But children made it personal. Children made failure unthinkable. The plan had been to secure the hostages and hold position until the helicopters arrived for extraction, Elena said. But the children were terrified. They were screaming. The noise was drawing every hostile in the area. We had maybe 10 minutes before we would be completely surrounded. What did you do? Someone asked quietly. Elena looked at Morrison. The Admiral's face was grim. He had read the after-action report. He knew what came next. I made the decision to evacuate immediately on foot, Elena said. We would move the hostages 2 kilometers east to an alternate extraction point. It meant fighting through unknown numbers of hostiles in an urban environment while protecting 52 civilians. It was a terrible plan. It was the only plan that had a chance of working. She shifted her weight, feeling the phantom ache in her legs where the bones had been crushed. Rivera argued with me, she said softly. He wanted to stay and hold the compound. Wait for air support. He said moving that many people through hostile territory was suicide. He was probably right. But you overruled him, Morrison said. Elena nodded. I pulled rank. I ordered the evacuation. We had the hostages moving down the stairs when the explosion hit. The entire basement detonated. IED remotely triggered. The building started to collapse from the foundation up. She stopped, her throat tight. This was the part that still woke her at 3 in the morning. The part that therapy had not touched. The stairwell gave way, she said. I fell through 2 floors. Landed in the rubble. Both legs pinned under a concrete beam. Fractured femurs. Shattered left tibia. 3 crushed vertebrae. I could not move. Could not feel anything below my waist except pain. The silence was absolute. Every man in the room was imagining it. Being trapped. Helpless. Knowing the enemy was coming. Rivera and Takahashi got the hostages out through a side wall that the explosion had opened. Elena continued. William stayed with me. He tried to lift the beam. Could not budge it. I ordered him to go. He refused. So I made it an order he could not refuse. I told him the hostages needed medical attention. I told him I would cover the rear while they evacuated. I told him I would be right behind them. She looked at her hands. They were steady now, but they had not been steady for 2 years after Mogadishu. Williams looked me in the eye and said he knew I was lying, Elena said. Then he handed me his spare magazines, gave me his sidearm, and left. That was the last time I saw him alive. He was killed covering the hostage's withdrawal. Took a round through the neck. Died before the medic could reach him. No one spoke. Elena continued, her voice flat now, drained of emotion by the weight of memory. I lay in that rubble for 11 minutes, she said. I had my rifle, Williams' pistol, and 247 rounds of ammunition. I killed every hostile who tried to enter that room. When my rifle jammed, I used the pistol. When the pistol was empty, I used debris. A piece of rebar. A chunk of concrete. Anything I could reach. How many? The petty officer asked quietly. 12 confirmed, Elena said. The quick reaction force found me unconscious. Blood loss. They said I should have died. The beam had severed my femoral artery. I had maybe 5 minutes of consciousness left when I passed out. They got a tourniquet on me. Medevaced me to Germany. I woke up 3 days later and learned that Rivera and Takahashi had died defending the hostages at the extraction point. All 52 hostages survived. 3 of my team did not. The weight of those words filled the room. 3 lives traded for 52. The math was simple. The guilt was infinite. Admiral Morrison broke the silence that followed Elena's words. Commander Voss spent the next 18 months in military hospitals, he said. 7 surgeries. Physical therapy, 6 hours a day. The doctors told her she would never walk again without assistance. They recommended full medical retirement with disability benefits. Elena shifted in her chair, the movement drawing every eye. The crutches leaning against the wall seemed to glow under the fluorescent lights, no longer symbols of weakness, but evidence of a war still being fought. I refused, she said simply. The Navy invested years training me. I had knowledge and experience that could still serve. Walking is just one skill among many. I could still think. I could still lead. I could still teach. What happened when you came back to active duty? One of the younger SEALs asked. Elena's expression hardened slightly. I was assigned to a desk at Naval Special Warfare Development Group, she said. Threat assessment. Intelligence analysis. Important work, but not what I had trained for. Not what I knew I could contribute. For 2 years, I pushed paperwork while watching teams deploy on missions I had helped plan. Morrison stepped in. Commander Voss submitted 14 proposals for tactical innovation during those 2 years, he said. 14 new approaches to high-risk operations based on her experience in Mogadishu and other classified missions. Every single proposal was rejected, not because they lacked merit, but because the review boards could not see past her injury. The petty officer in the front row shook his head slowly. That is not right, ma'am, he said. If the tactics are sound, your ability to walk should not matter. Elena gave him a small nod of acknowledgement. You would think so, she said, but institutional inertia is real. People become comfortable with established methods. Change requires someone with credibility to force it through. I had lost my credibility the moment I started using crutches. So what changed? Another SEAL asked. Morocco, Elena said. 8 months ago, a SEAL team encountered a situation similar to Mogadishu. Hostages in a fortified compound, limited air support, time pressure. They followed standard protocols for building assault. 3 operators were killed in the first 60 seconds. The mission was aborted. The hostages were executed 2 hours later. The room absorbed this information in grim silence. Failed missions were rare in the SEAL community, but when they happened, they were studied obsessively. Lessons learned in blood. I was not on the operational planning team for Morocco, Elena continued. But when I reviewed the after-action report, I saw immediately what had gone wrong. They had approached the compound using doctrine that was 15 years old. Doctrine designed for a different enemy in a different era. The terrorists they faced had studied our tactics. They had adapted. We had not. Morrison walked to the front table and pulled up a digital display on the wall screen. A compound appeared, aerial surveillance image marked with tactical notations. This is the Morocco compound, he said. Commander Voss, walk them through what you saw. Elena stood, reaching for her crutches. The SEALs watched as she moved to the screen, the soft click of the crutches marking each step. She studied the image for a moment, then pointed to the main entrance. Standard approach would be simultaneous breach at 3 points, she said. Main entrance, side access, roof insertion. The Morocco team did exactly that. But look at the sightlines. See how the main courtyard is visible from every window on the second and third floors? That is a kill box. The enemy knew we would breach there, because that is what we always do. What should they have done? A SEAL asked. Elena traced a path on the screen with her finger. The compound backs up to a residential area, 8 meters between the target building and civilian homes. That gap was considered too narrow for standard approach. But narrow is an advantage if you know how to use it. A small team, maybe 2 operators, could have accessed the compound through the residential side. No vehículos, no heavy equipment, just personal weapons and explosives. The petty officer leaned forward. They would be completely exposed during the approach. Only if the enemy is looking in that direction, Elena countered. But they were not looking there. They were watching the main approaches because that is where they expected us. A small team could have breached the rear wall, entered the ground floor, and begun securing hostages while the enemy was still focused outward. Morrison added context. After Morocco, I personally requested that Commander Voss review our tactical doctrine for urban hostage rescue. She spent 4 months building a completely new framework. It incorporates lessons from Mogadishu, Morocco, and 17 other operations that did not go according to plan. Elena returned to her chair. The new doctrine emphasizes adaptability over standardization, she said. Every compound is different. Every enemy is different. We cannot keep using the same playbook and expect different results. The framework I developed gives team leaders tools to assess each situation uniquely and develop approaches the enemy will not anticipate. Has it been tested? Someone asked. 3 times, Morrison said. All 3 missions succeeded with 0 friendly casualties. Average hostage recovery rate increased from 72% to 98%. Commander Voss's framework is now being incorporated into SEAL training curriculum. She is personally training the next generation of team leaders. The transformation in the room was complete. The SEALs were looking at Elena with something approaching reverence. She was not a broken warrior to be pitted. She was an asset they had nearly dismissed because of their own ignorance. Elena watched their faces and felt a familiar exhaustion. This was always how it went. First dismissal, then the story, then overcorrection into hero worship. She was neither helpless nor superhuman. She was simply a warrior who had adapted to new limitations. The reason you are here today, Morrison said, addressing the full room, is because we have a situation that requires Commander Voss's specific expertise. Lieutenant Shah's team is deploying in 72 hours. The target is a compound in Yemen. Hostage rescue. The tactical assessment shows multiple parallels to both Mogadishu and Morocco. Elena pulled up a new image on the screen. The Yemen compound appeared, larger than either of the previous targets. This is the most complex rescue operation we have attempted in 5 years, she said. 214 hostages, American and European nationals. The terrorist group holding them is the successor organization to the cell I faced in Mogadishu. They have learned from their predecessors' failures. The SEALs studied the screen with professional intensity. Elena continued, highlighting key features of the compound. 3-story reinforced structure. Estimated 400 hostile combatants. The compound sits in the center of a densely populated area. Collateral damage must be minimized. Rules of engagement are extremely restrictive. How many operators are we sending? The petty officer asked. Morrison answered, 16. 2 8-man teams. Lieutenant Shah will lead Team 1. Lieutenant Commander Harris will lead Team 2. They will have limited air support due to political considerations. Extraction window is tight. 60 minutes from initial breach to complete withdrawal. The room was silent as the SEALs absorbed the magnitude of the mission. Elena let them process before continuing. The enemy is expecting us, she said. They have reinforced the obvious entry points. They have established overlapping fields of fire. They have backup generators and communications redundancy. They have studied our tactics extensively. Then how do we get in? Asil asked. Elena smiled for the first time since entering the room. It was a cold smile, the kind that came from knowing something the enemy did not. That is what we're going to spend the next 72 hours figuring out, she said. I have identified 3 potential approaches that fall outside standard doctrine. Each carries a significant risk, but each also has a reasonable chance of success if executed properly. Morrison gestured to the assembled SEALs. You will be working directly with Commander Voss for mission planning, he said. She has tactical authority for this operation. Her recommendations will be implemented. If any of you have a problem with that, speak now. No one spoke. The earlier mockery seemed to belong to a different lifetime, a different group of men who had not yet learned what they were looking at when they saw the crutches. Good, Morrison said. We begin detailed planning at 1400 hours. Commander Voss will lead the briefing. Team leaders, I want you to review the Morocco and Mogadishu after-action reports before then. Understand what worked, what failed, and why. Questions? The petty officer raised his hand. Sir, permission to speak freely? Granted. Where is Lieutenant Shaw? You should be hearing this. Morrison's expression went cold. Lieutenant Shaw is currently reconsidering his approach to leadership and respect. He will rejoin the team once he demonstrates that he understands the gravity of his earlier behavior. Until then, Lieutenant Commander Harris has tactical command of both teams. The message was clear. Shaw had not just offended Elena. He had compromised mission readiness through his prejudice. In the SEAL community, that was unforgivable. Elena spoke up. Admiral, with your permission, I would like Lieutenant Shaw to participate in the planning sessions. His team needs him, and he needs to understand why his assumptions were dangerous. Morrison studied her for a long moment. You are more forgiving than I would be, Commander. Not forgiving, Elena said. Practical. We have 72 hours to prepare for a mission that will determine whether 200 people live or die. I need every capable operator focused and ready. Personal feelings are irrelevant. The Admiral nodded slowly. Very well. I will inform Lieutenant Shaw that his participation is contingent on his complete cooperation and respect. Any further issues, and he is removed from the deployment permanently. Elena reached for her crutches and stood. Gentlemen, she said, addressing the room, in 3 days, some of you will be entering hell. My job is to make sure you come back alive. I do not care if you like me. I do not care if you respect me. I care that you listen, learn, and execute. 200 lives are depending on us getting this right. Let's get to work. The tactical planning room was smaller than the briefing theater, designed for intense, focused work rather than presentations. Elena arrived 20 minutes early, her crutches silent on the carpeted floor. She had learned long ago that arriving first gave her time to position herself, without an audience watching every careful movement. She arranged the digital displays, pulled up satellite imagery of the Yemen compound, and laid out printed tactical maps across the main table. The compound loomed on the screen like a fortress, its walls thick enough to withstand anything short of sustained bombardment. 400 terrorists inside, 214 hostages somewhere in that maze of concrete and steel. The door opened. Lieutenant Commander James Harris entered, a weathered operator in his late 30s with the quiet confidence of someone who had survived more deployments than he could count. He stopped when he saw Elena, then approached with measured respect. Commander, he said, extending his hand, I wanted to introduce myself properly before the briefing. James Harris. I will be leading Team 2. Elena shook his hand. His grip was firm, but not performative. Good to meet you, Lieutenant Commander. I reviewed your service record. Fallujah, Ramadi, 3 tours in Afghanistan. Impressive résumé. Harris shrugged. I have been around long enough to know what I do not know, he said. That Morocco operation haunts me. I trained 2 of the men who died there. If your framework can prevent that from happening again, you have my complete support. Elena apreciata directness. It saved time. Your team's role will be critical, she said. I am planning a split approach. Team 1 handles primary breach and hostage security. Team 2 creates the conditions that make the breach possible. Harris studied the compound image. That is a lot of hostiles for 16 operators to handle. We will not be handling all of them, Elena said. We will be avoiding most of them. The key is making them look in the wrong direction at the wrong time. The door opened again. SEALs began filtering in, each one stopping to nod respectfully to Elena before taking positions around the table. The petty officer from the earlier briefing introduced himself as Senior Chief Daniel Rourke, 20 years in the teams, currently serving as Senior Enlisted Advisor. The room filled quickly. 15 operators, all eyes on the screens, all minds already working through the tactical puzzle. Elena watched them assess the compound, saw the moment each one recognized how difficult this would be. The door opened one final time. Lieutenant Marcus Shaw entered, his posture rigid, his face carefully neutral. He did not look at Elena. He moved to the far side of the table and stood at attention, waiting. Admiral Morrison followed Shaw inside. The room snapped to attention. Morrison waved them to ease. "Gentlemen," he said, "Lieutenant Shaw has requested the opportunity to apologize to Commander Voss and to this team." "Lieutenant, proceed." Shaw turned to face Elena directly. His jaw was tight, but his eyes were clear. "Commander Voss," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the room, "I owe you an apology that words cannot adequately express. I judged you based on ignorance and prejudice. I disrespected your service, your sacrifice, and your rank. I compromised team cohesion through my behavior. There is no excuse for what I said or how I acted." He paused, swallowing hard. "I have spent the last 4 hours reviewing the Mogadishu and Morocco after-action reports," he continued. "I understand now what you accomplished and what you lost. I understand that I am alive today because warriors like you and Master Chief Rivera made decisions I cannot even comprehend. I am asking for the chance to learn from you, not because I deserve it, but because the mission requires it and the hostages deserve our absolute best." The room was silent. Elena studied Shaw's face, looking for insincerity. She found none, just raw honesty and what appeared to be genuine shame. "Apology accepted, Lieutenant," she said simply. "Now take a seat. We have work to do." Shaw's shoulders dropped fractionally, relief visible despite his attempt to maintain composure. He moved to an open chair, finally meeting her eyes with something like gratitude. Morrison addressed the room. "You have 72 hours to plan and prepare for the most complex hostage rescue operation in recent memory. Commander Voss has tactical authority. What she says is what happens. Clear?" The SEALs responded in unison. "Clear, sir." Morrison left. Elena moved to the front of the room, using one crutch to point at the main screen. "Gentlemen," she began, "forget everything you know about standard breach protocols. This compound was designed by people who studied our tactics. Every obvious entry point is a trap." She pulled up thermal imaging overlays. "The hostages are being held in 3 separate locations within the compound. First floor, northwest corner. Second floor, central section. Third floor, east wing. The terrorists have deliberately separated them to complicate rescue attempts." "How current is this intelligence?" Harris asked. 18 hours old, Elena replied. "We have a source inside the compound. A local maintenance worker who has been feeding us information. His access is limited, but what he has provided has been accurate." She zoomed in on the compound's western wall. "This is our entry point," she said. "Not the main gate. Not the reinforced doors. Not the roof. We're going through this section of wall that backs onto a residential neighborhood." Senior Chief Rourke leaned forward. "Ma'am, that wall is 18 inches of reinforced concrete. Breaching it will create noise that alerts everyone inside." "Correct," Elena said, "which is why we are not breaching it during the initial assault. We are breaching it 48 hours before the mission." The room erupted in confused murmurs. Shaw spoke up. "Commander, I do not understand. If we breach early, they will repair it or reinforce security in that sector." Elena smiled. "They will not know we breached it," she said. "We are going to create a controlled fracture line in the wall using specialized cutting equipment. From the outside, the wall will appear intact. But when we apply pressure during the actual mission, it will collapse inward in sections we predetermine. Harris's eyes widened. That is brilliant, he said. We control exactly where the breach occurs and how fast it happens. No noise. No warning. Elena nodded. A foreman team will conduct the preparation work tomorrow night. Silent approach. Precision cutting. They will be in and out in 90 minutes. The enemy will never know their fortress has been compromised. Who runs the prep team? Rourke asked. You do, Senior Chief, Elena said. I need your experience and your steady hand. Pick 3 operators you trust completely. This cannot go wrong. Rourke nodded, his expression serious. Understood, Mung. Elena continued through the tactical plan. Once the wall comes down, Team 1 enters immediately. Your objective is the first floor hostages. 23 people in a single room. You secure them, you hold that position, you prepare for immediate evacuation. What about the other hostage groups? Shaw asked. Team 2 has them, Elena said, looking at Harris. You will be entering from a different vector. While Team 1 is creating chaos on the first floor, you'll be accessing the compound through the sewer system. The sewer system, Harris repeated slowly. Elena pulled up infrastructure diagrams. The compound has a drainage system that connects to the city sewers. The terrorists know this. They have graded the access points and posted guards. But what they do not know is that the maintenance worker has been gradually weakening the grate mountings over the past month. One explosive charge will remove the grate entirely. Shaw was studying the sewer maps intently. Commander, that puts Team 2 directly under the second floor hostage location. We could breach upward through the floor. Exactly, Elena said. While the enemy is responding to Team 1's breach on the first floor, Team 2 emerges in the middle of the second floor. You secure those hostages before the terrorists even understand they are under attack from multiple directions. What about the third floor group? A younger SEAL asked. That is the most difficult extraction, Elena admitted. The third floor has the heaviest security. 20 armed guards in constant rotation. We cannot approach it the same way. So how do we get them out? The SEAL pressed. We do not, Elena said. They come to us. The room fell silent. Harris broke it. You are planning to make the terrorists move the hostages. Elena pulled up a new schematic. The compound has a backup generator in the basement. If that generator fails, emergency protocols require all hostages to be moved to the first floor assembly area. The terrorists have drilled this procedure. It is their plan for evacuating hostages if the compound comes under heavy bombardment. We cut the power and they bring the hostages to us, Rourke said, understanding dawning. Not just cut the power, Elena corrected. We create the appearance of a major system failure. Backup générateur explosion. Smoke. Confusion. The terrorists will think the compound is structurally compromised. They will follow their own protocol and consolidate all hostages on the first floor for potential evacuation. Shaw was nodding slowly, which puts all 214 hostages in one location that we already control. Where we will be waiting, Elena confirmed. The terrorists bring the hostages directly into our perimeter. We secure them. We extract immediately through the breached wall, and we are gone before enemy reinforcements can organize a response. Harris stood and walked to the map. Commander, this is the most unconventional approach I have ever seen. It requires perfect timing, multiple simultaneous actions, and assumes the enemy will react exactly as predicted. Yes, Elena said simply. I love it, Harris said, a fierce grin spreading across his face. It is completely insane and absolutely brilliant. The other SEALs were studying the plan now with growing excitement. This was what they lived for. Not brute force assaults, but surgical precision. Not predictable tactics, but adaptive innovation. Questions, Elena said. I know you have them. For the next hour, the operators dissected every element of the plan. Elena answered each question with specificity, demonstrating she had considered contingencies they had not yet imagined. Backup extraction routes, communication protocols, medical evacuation procedures, rules of engagement for minimizing civilian casualties. Shaw raised his hand. Commander, What is your biggest concern about this plan? Elena met his eyes. That the intelligence is wrong about hostage locations, she said. If they have moved even one group to a different area of the compound, the timing collapses. We would be breaching based on outdated information. Can we verify locations before we go in? Shaw asked. Our source inside is attempting final confirmation, Elena said. But we may not have that information until we are already committed. That is why each team needs to be prepared to adapt if the situation changes. The framework is solid, but war never follows the framework exactly. Rourke spoke up. Ma'am, you're not going to be on site during the mission. How do we handle tactical decisions if things go sideways? I will be in Tactical Operations Center, Elena said. Real-time communication with both teams. I will have complete surveillance feed and can provide guidance. But ultimately, Lieutenant Commander Harris and Lieutenant Shaw will make the ground decisions. They know this plan as well as I do now. Trust your training. Trust each other. She looked around the room at the faces of the warriors who would execute this mission. Gentlemen, she said, 214 people are counting on us to do the impossible. In 72 hours, you will walk into hell. My job is to make sure you walk back out with everyone who went in as a hostage. Let us make sure we are ready. The phone call came at 0300 hours. Elena was already awake, sitting in her quarters reviewing satellite imagery for the 100th time. She knew what the call meant before she answered. Bad news always came in the darkest hours. Commander Voss, the voice on the other end, belonged to Captain Miller from Intelligence. We have a problem with the Yemen operation. Elena's stomach tightened. Go ahead. Our source inside the compound missed his scheduled contact window 6 hours ago. We have been monitoring communications. There is unusual activity around midnight local time. Multiple encrypted transmissions. We believe he's been compromised. The tablet in Elena's hand suddenly felt impossibly heavy. Without the inside source, they had no way to verify current hostage locations. No way to confirm that the preparation work on the wall had gone undetected. No way to know if the entire tactical plan was based on information that was already obsolete. What is the current assessment? Elena asked, forcing her voice to remain steady. Intelligence believes the source was discovered during a routine security sweep. We do not know if he revealed anything before being detained. We do not know if he is alive. What we do know is that the compound went to heightened alert status 90 minutes ago. Elena closed her eyes. This was the nightmare scenario. The enemy knew something was wrong, even if they did not know exactly what. They would be reviewing security protocols, checking for vulnerabilities, maybe even moving the hostages to different locations. Does Admiral Morrison know? He is being briefed now. He wants you in tactical operations in 30 minutes. He is considering mission abort. Elena stood, reaching for her crutches. I will be there in 20. She dressed quickly, her mind racing through contingencies. An abort meant 214 hostages would remain in terrorist hands. It meant the months of planning were wasted. It meant admitting that the risk was too great. But continuing with compromised intelligence meant potentially sending 16 operators into a trap. The Tactical Operations Center was already buzzing with activity when Elena arrived. Admiral Morrison stood at the main display, his face carved from stone. Lieutenant Commander Harris and Lieutenant Shaw were present, both looking like they had not slept. Senior Chief Rourke was on a secure line, speaking quietly to someone. Morrison turned when Elena entered. Commander, he said, I assume you've been briefed. Yes, sir. What is the current recommendation from intelligence? Morrison gestured to the display. They are recommending we abort. The risk assessment has gone from elevated to critical. Without confirmation of hostage locations, without knowing if our preparation work was detected, they believe we are walking into an ambush. What do you think, sir? Elena asked. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. I think that 214 people are going to die if we do nothing. But I also think that 16 operators are going to die if we go in blind. I need you to tell me if this mission is still viable. Elena moved to the display, studying the compound layout she had memorized. Lieutenant Commander Harris, she said, what is the status of the wall preparation? Harris stepped forward. Senior Chief Rourke's team completed the work 46 hours ago. No detected response from the enemy. The fracture lines are in place. As far as we can determine, that aspect of the plan remains uncompromised. And the sewer access? Also unchanged, Harris confirmed. We have had continuous surveillance on that entry point. No indication they have discovered the weakened grate. Elena turned to Shaw. Lieutenant, if the hostages have been moved from their known locations, how does that change the tactical approach? Shaw had clearly been thinking about this. If they moved the hostages, ma'am, they likely consolidated them. 3 separate locations was already a security challenge. If they suspect a rescue attempt, standard procedure would be to put everyone in the most defensible position. Which would be where? Elena said. The 3rd floor, Shaw said without hesitation. Maximum distance from ground-level breach. Single access point through a reinforced stairwell. Heavy security already in place. Elena nodded. That was her assessment as well. So the question becomes whether we can adapt the plan to account for a 3rd floor consolidation. Morrison interrupted. Commander, adapting is one thing. Going in blind is another. We do not know for certain where the hostages are. We do not know what the enemy knows. This is not a calculated risk. This is a gamble. Elena met his eyes. Sir, with respect, every combat operation is a gamble. We never have perfect intelligence. We never have certainty. What we have is a framework that allows for adaptation and a team trained to execute under uncertainty. The Admiral's expression did not change. Continue. Elena pulled up the compound schematic. If the hostages have been moved to the 3rd floor, we reverse the approach. Team 2 does not breach through the floor. They go up the exterior wall. Rope assault through the 3rd floor windows, while Team 1 creates the diversion on the 1st floor. That is a suicide run, Rourke said, looking up from his phone. 3rd floor windows are barred. Exterior wall is exposed to fire from multiple positions. Only if the enemy is looking outward, Elena countered. But they will not be looking outward if we give them something urgent to focus on inside. What kind of diversion? Morrison asked. Elena pointed to the basement generator location. We still cut the power. We still create the appearance of catastrophic system failure. But instead of waiting for them to move hostages, we force an immediate crisis. Small explosives in the basement level. Enough to create panic. Enough to make them think the entire compound is under bombardment. Shaw was following her logic. They pull security from the perimeter to defend the interior. That gives Team 2 the window they need for the rope assault. Exactly, Elena said. The enemy expects us to come through doors. They expect us to follow building layout. They do not expect us to come through windows on the 3rd floor while the building is supposedly under attack from below. Harris studied the display. How long would Team 2 have before the enemy realizes where the actual breach is happening? Maybe 90 seconds, Elena admitted. 2 minutes if we are lucky. But that should be enough time to secure the hostage room and establish a defensive perimeter. Morrison crossed his arms. And if you are wrong? If the hostages are not on the 3rd floor? If they have been split across multiple new locations? Then we adapt again, Elena said. The beauty of this framework is that it does not rely on one specific approach. We have trained for multiple scenarios. Every operator knows the mission objectives. Secure hostages. Minimize casualties. Extract efficiently. The methods can change as long as the objectives remain clear. The Admiral turned to Harris and Shaw. What do you think? This is your team going in. I need your honest assessment. Harris spoke first. Sir, I have been on 42 combat operations. I have never had perfect intelligence for any of them. What I have right now is a tactical plan from someone who has done the impossible before and a team that trusts that plan. I say we go. Shaw nodded agreement. Admiral, Commander Voss's framework saved lives in 3 previous operations. The Morocco team did not have this kind of adaptive planning. They followed rigid doctrine and people died. I would rather go in with a flexible plan than wait for perfect information that will never come. Morrison looked at Elena. Commander, if this goes wrong, those deaths are on all of us. But the decision to launch is ultimately mine. I need you to tell me with complete honesty. Can this mission succeed? Elena thought of Mogadishu. She thought of the decision to launch an unsanctioned operation with incomplete intelligence. She thought of Rivera and Takahashi and Williams, who had trusted her judgment and paid for it with their lives. She thought of the 52 hostages who had lived because someone had been willing to gamble. "Sir," she said quietly, "I cannot guarantee success. No one can. What I can guarantee is that this team is as prepared as humanly possible. The plan is sound. The operators are skilled. The framework allows for adaptation. Yes, we're going in with less than ideal intelligence. But the alternative is letting 214 people die while we wait for certainty that will never arrive." Morrison was silent for 30 seconds that felt like 30 minutes. Finally, he nodded. "Mission is go," he said. "Launch in 24 hours. Commander Voss, you have tactical authority. Make it work." Relief and terror washed through Elena in equal measure. "Yes, sir." As Morrison left the operations center, the weight of the decision settled on everyone present. Harris and Shaw began coordinating with their teams. Rourke was already on the phone, updating breach equipment requirements. Elena stood alone at the display, staring at the compound that had occupied her thoughts for weeks. 24 hours. That was all the time they had left to refine the plan, to account for every possible contingency, to prepare for a mission that could save hundreds or cost dozens. Her phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. She opened it and felt her blood freeze. The message was in Arabic. She translated it quickly. "Your source is dead. We know you are coming. The hostages will die first." Elena's hand trembled slightly as she forwarded the message to intelligence. The enemy was trying to bait them, trying to force an abort or create fear. It was psychological warfare, nothing more. But what if it was not? What if the terrorists really did know the plan? What if they were waiting? Shaw appeared at her shoulder. "Commander, are you all right?" Elena locked her phone screen. "Yes, Lieutenant. Just preparing for all possible outcomes." Shaw studied her face. "Ma'am, I know I have no right to say this after how I treated you, but I want you to know that everyone on this team trusts you completely. Whatever happens tomorrow, we go in knowing we have the best tactical mind in naval special warfare guiding us." Elena managed a small smile. "I appreciate that, Lieutenant. Make sure your team gets rest. Tomorrow will test everyone." After Shaw left, Elena returned to her quarters. She had 24 hours to finalize every detail. 24 hours to prepare for every contingency. 24 hours before 16 warriors would trust her plan with their lives. She looked at the photo on her desk. Rivera, Takahashi, and Williams grinning at the camera after a training exercise. Dead because of decisions she had made. This time would be different, she told herself. This time everyone would come home. But deep in her chest, where the old injuries still ached on cold mornings, she felt the familiar weight of command. The knowledge that no matter how good the plan, war always demanded its price. The tactical operations center hummed with controlled tension. Elena sat at the command console, surrounded by screens showing live feeds from helmet cameras, satellite surveillance, and thermal imaging. 23 hours had passed since the decision to launch. The teams were in position. The mission was 60 seconds from execution. "Commander," Harris's voice came through the secure channel. "Team 2 in position at sewer access point. Great removal in 30 seconds. "Copy that," Elena replied. "Team 1 status?" Shaw responded immediately. "Team 1 positioned at West Wall breach point. Ready to initiate on your mark." Elena's eyes moved across the displays. 16 green dots representing the operators. The compound showed as a heat signature maze, bright spots indicating concentrations of people. Her breath caught. The third floor was lit up like a furnace. Massive heat signature, far more than the estimated 20 guards. "All teams hold," she said sharply. "I need thermal analysis on third floor concentration." An intelligence analyst appeared at her shoulder. "Commander, we are reading approximately 150 thermal signatures on the third floor. That is consistent with hostage consolidation plus heavy guard presence." Shaw had been right. They had moved everyone to the most defensible position. But 150 was not 214. Where were the others? Sweep the entire compound, Elena ordered. Account for all thermal signatures. The analyst's fingers flew across the keyboard. We have approximately 60 signatures in the basement level. Another 40 scattered across first and second floors. Total count 250, plus or minus 10 for thermal overlap. Too many people. The terrorists had brought in reinforcements. Elena's mind raced through the implications. More guards meant more firepower, more resistance, more variables. Admiral Morrison appeared beside her. "Commander, what are we looking at?" "Sir, they consolidated the hostages as predicted, but they also reinforced security. We are looking at significantly more hostile presence than estimated." Morrison's face was grim. "Do we abort?" Elena stared at the screens. 214 hostages on the third floor, surrounded by guards. 60 people in the basement, likely more guards or logistics personnel. The window for extraction was narrowing with every second. "No, sir," she said. "We adapt. Team 2, change of mission. You're not going through the floor. You're going up the exterior wall as planned for third-floor contingency. Rope assault through western windows. You will have 90 seconds from basement detonation to breach and secure." Harris acknowledged without hesitation. "Understood." Switching to rope assault configuration. "We will need covering fire from Team 1. Team 1, Elena said, you breach the west wall as planned, but your objective changes. You're not securing hostages. You are creating maximum chaos and drawing every guard on the first and second floors to your position. You need to make them think you are the main assault force." Shaw's voice was steady. "How long do we hold that position?" "Until Team 2 has the hostages secured," Elena said. "Then you collapse back through the breach point and extract. Team 2 will bring the hostages down the interior stairwell and out through your breach." "Commander," Shaw said, "if we draw the full guard force, we are going to be significantly outnumbered. 8 of us against potentially 100 hostiles." "I know," Elena said quietly, "but it is the only way to give Team 2 the opening they need. Can you hold?" There was a pause. Then Shaw's voice came back, firm and resolved. "Yes, ma'am. We will hold." Morrison leaned close to Elena. "You're asking them to be bait." "Yes, sir," Elena admitted. "It is the only tactical option that gives us a chance at extracting all hostages." Morrison studied the screens. "This is going to get bloody." "Yes, sir." The Admiral straightened. "Then let us make sure it is worth it." "Execute when ready, Commander." Elena took a breath. "All teams, final authorization received. Team 1, you are clear to breach. Team 2, stand by for rope deployment. Basement charges will detonate in 60 seconds. Mark." The countdown began. Elena watched the feeds as Team 1 prepared their breach charge. Harris's team was already moving into rope assault position, climbing equipment ready. In the basement, a small remote device that had been placed during an earlier supply delivery began its final sequence. 30 seconds. Elena's hands gripped the edge of the console. This was the moment when everything could go catastrophically wrong. If the basement explosion was too large, it could collapse the building. If it was too small, it would not create enough panic. If the guards did not respond as predicted, both teams would be exposed. 15 seconds. Team 1, prepare for breach on detonation, Elena ordered. 10 seconds. Team 2, ropes deployed. Standing by. 5 seconds. Elena held her breath. The screens showed thermal signatures moving normally through the compound. Unsuspecting. Unprepared. Detonation. The basement level flashed white on thermal imaging. The entire compound structure shuddered. Smoke began billowing from ground-level vents. Alarm systems that the operators could not hear created visible panic in the thermal signatures. People began moving rapidly, guards rushing toward the basement, hostages clustering together in fear. Team 1, breach now, Elena commanded. The west wall came down in a shower of concrete dust. Shaw's team poured through the opening, weapons ready, moving with the precision of apex predators. They began engaging targets immediately, controlled bursts of suppressed fire, taking down guards who rushed to respond. Team 2, Initiate rope assault, Elena said. Harris's team went up the exterior wall like spiders. Fast-tripping techniques reversed, ascending with mechanical efficiency. The third-floor windows were barred but not reinforced. Breaching charges made quick work of them. Contact, Harris reported. Heavy resistance. Engaging. On the helmet camera feeds, Elena saw the controlled chaos of close-quarters combat. Harris's team moved through the third floor with devastating efficiency, clearing guards, identifying hostages, creating a secure perimeter. Team 1 status? Elena asked. We have their attention, Shaw replied. His voice was strained. Heavy contact. Multiple hostiles converging on our position. We are holding, but ammunition expenditure is high. Elena watched Shaw's feed. His team had established a defensive position just inside the breach, creating a kill box that funneled enemy forces into concentrated fire lanes. Bodies were piling up, but more guards kept coming. Team 2. How long until hostages are secured? Elena demanded. 90 seconds, Harris said. We have them gathered, but we need to clear the stairwell. Team 1 cannot hold for 90 seconds at current engagement rate, the analyst beside Elena said quietly. Elena made the calculation instantly. Team 1, collapse your perimeter, she ordered. Fall back to the breach point. Create a bottleneck. Make them come through a single point of entry. Shaw acknowledged, and his team shifted formation. They pulled back to the breach itself, using the collapsed wall sections as cover, creating a narrow channel that prevented the enemy from using superior numbers effectively. Contact front, Shaw reported. Multiple hostiles. We are holding, but we need extract soon. Team 2 had reached the stairwell. Elena watched Harris's feed as they began moving hostages down, children first, then elderly, a practiced evacuation under fire. The guards who had remained on the third floor were neutralized or pinned down. Team 1, hostage column is moving, Elena said. 30 seconds. Copy, Shaw replied. His breathing was labored. Taking casualties here. Martinez is down. Fletcher has a rough hand throw, but still operational. Medical team standing by at extract point, Elena said, fighting to keep emotion out of her voice. Hold your position. 20 seconds felt like 20 hours. Elena watched both feeds simultaneously. Team 1 holding against impossible odds. Team 2 moving 214 hostages down a stairwell under combat conditions. Either team failing meant catastrophic casualties. Team 1, first hostages are at your position, Elena said. Begin evacuation protocol. Shaw's team shifted again, half maintaining suppressing fire, while half began physically moving hostages through the breach and into the extraction vehicles that had moved into position outside. Women carrying children, elderly being supported by younger hostages, all of them moving through an active combat zone. We have 50 out, Shaw reported. Continuing evacuation. Enemy reinforcements arriving from the east, the analyst warned. Approximately 40 additional hostiles converging on the breach point. Team 1, you have incoming from your 3 o'clock, Elena said. Forti plus hostile. Shaw's voice was tight. We cannot hold against that many and protect the hostages. Elena made the decision instantly. Team 2, you need to establish a secondary defensive position at the base of the stairwell. Cover the hostage column from behind. Team 1 focuses on frontal defense only. Harris acknowledged. His team took position, creating a protective corridor for the hostages to move through while engaging threats from the interior of the compound. 100 out, Shaw reported. The feeds showed continuous muzzle flashes. Smoke obscured visibility. The thermal imaging revealed the enemy reinforcements closing fast. Shaw's team was almost out of options. 150 out, Shaw said. His voice carried exhaustion and determination in equal measure. Come on, Elena whispered, watching the feeds. Move, move. 200 out. The reinforcements hit Team 1's position like a wave. The defensive line buckled, but held. Elena watched Shaw take around his body armor, saw him stumble, but keep firing. Senior Chief Rourke was bleeding from a head wound, but still coordinating fields of fire. All hostages are out, Harris reported. Team 2 beginning collapse. Team 1, Everyone is clear, Elena said. Collapse and extract immediately. Shaw's team began their fighting withdrawal. They moved in pairs, leapfrogging back through the breach while maintaining suppressing fire. Harris's team had reached the breach and added their firepower to the covering barrage. Team 1 is out, Shaw finally reported. All personnel accounted for. 3 wounded but mobile. We are clear. Elena felt the tension release from her shoulders. Extract vehicles. Move to secondary positions, she ordered. Air support will cover your withdrawal. The feeds showed the convoy moving rapidly away from the compound, helicopter gunships arriving to discourage pursuit. Inside the vehicles, 214 hostages sat in shocked silence, rescued from a fate they had stopped believing could be avoided. Morrison placed a hand on Elena's shoulder. Well done, Commander. Elena stared at the screens, showing the burning compound behind them. 3 wounded. Martinez's status unknown. 214 saved. The math was favorable, but the cost was real. Give me casualty reports immediately, she said. I want medical status on all wounded operators within 5 minutes. The operations center erupted in controlled celebration. Analysts were high-fiving. Support staff were embracing. But Elena remained focused on the feeds, watching until every operator and every hostage reached the secure extraction point. Only then did she allow herself to lean back in her chair. Her hands were trembling. She clasped them together and closed her eyes briefly. Commander, the analyst said, all operators are confirmed safe at extraction point. Martinez has a broken arm, but is stable. Fletcher and Davies have minor wounds. All hostages are accounted for and undergoing medical screening. 0 fatalities on our side. Elena opened her eyes. Thank you. Morrison smiled. Commander Voss, that was the finest piece of tactical command I have witnessed in 30 years. You just pulled off the impossible. The secure debriefing room at Naval Special Warfare Command was packed beyond capacity. Every seat was filled with operators who had participated in the Yemen mission or who wanted to hear firsthand how it had succeeded against impossible odds. Elena sat at the front table beside Admiral Morrison, her crutches leaning against her chair, a stack of after-action reports in front of her. Lieutenant Commander Harris and Lieutenant Shaw sat to her left, both showing the visible marks of combat. Harris had a bandage across his left temple where shrapnel had grazed him. Shaw's right arm was in a sling, the result of a dislocated shoulder from the fighting withdrawal. Neither man seemed to notice their injuries. The room fell silent as Morrison stood. Gentlemen, he began, we are here to conduct the formal after-action review of Operation Sentinel Shield. This mission resulted in the successful recovery of 214 hostages with 0 friendly fatalities. It represents a new standard in tactical innovation and adaptive planning. He gestured to Elena. Commander Voss will lead the tactical breakdown. I expect everyone in this room to study what she is about to present. This is how we evolve. This is how we stay ahead of enemies who study our methods. Elena stood, reaching for one crutch to steady herself as she moved to the main display. Thank you, Admiral. Before we begin the tactical review, I want to address something that happened before this mission ever launched. The room waited. Elena pulled up an image on the screen. It showed the briefing room from 2 weeks earlier, the same room where Shaw had mocked her crutches. Some of you were present when I first entered this facility, she said. Some of you witnessed Lieutenant Shaw's initial reaction to my presence. Some of you laughed. The room shifted uncomfortably. Shaw's face flushed red, but he met her eyes steadily. I am bringing this up not to embarrass anyone, Elena continued, but because it illustrates the most dangerous assumption warriors can make. You assumed that physical limitation equals operational limitation. You assumed that someone who cannot walk normally cannot contribute to mission success. That assumption almost cost this mission before it began. She pulled up mission statistics. Lieutenant Shaw's team held a defensive position against overwhelming enemy forces for 4 minutes and 17 seconds. They protected 214 hostages while outnumbered approximately 15 to 1. Lieutenant Shaw personally eliminated 11 hostile combatants while wounded. His tactical decisions under fire saved countless lives. Shaw looked down at the table, clearly uncomfortable with the praise. The same man who mocked my crutches became one of the most critical elements in mission success, Elena said. Why? Because he learned to look past surface assumptions. He learned that capability comes in many forms. He learned that the most valuable warriors are not always the ones who look the part. She turned to face the room directly. Every person in this room has limitations. Some are visible like mine. Some are invisible. Age, injury, experience gaps, personal struggles. The question is never whether you have limitations. The question is whether you let those limitations define your value or whether you find ways to contribute despite them. Morrison nodded approvingly. Elena moved to the tactical breakdown, pulling up the compound schematic. The enemy in Yemen had studied our standard breach protocols, she said. They had fortified every obvious entry point. They had established overlapping fields of fire. They had backup communications and redundant security. They had done everything right according to conventional defensive doctrine. So how do we beat them? A young SEAL in the back asked. We did not follow conventional offensive doctrine, Elena replied. We breached a wall they thought was impregnable. We entered through sewers they thought were secured. We assaulted upward through windows they did not believe anyone would attempt. We made them defend against approaches they had not prepared for. Harris stood up. Commander, permission to add context. Granted. Harris addressed the room. I have been a SEAL for 16 years. I have run more hostage rescue operations than I can count. I have never seen tactical planning as thorough or as adaptive as what Commander Voss developed. She did not just create a single approach. She created a framework that allowed us to adjust in real time when conditions changed. He pulled up thermal imagery from the mission. When we discovered the hostages had been moved and guard numbers had increased, standard protocol would have been to abort or request additional support. Commander Voss redesigned the entire approach in under 3 minutes. She recognized that our disadvantage could become an advantage if we used it correctly. How? Someone asked. Shaw stood, wincing slightly at the movement. Because the enemy expected us to abort, he said. They had reinforced their position, assuming we would either cancel the mission or come in with overwhelming force. They did not expect us to come in with our original team size, using completely unorthodox tactics. Elena nodded. Exactly. We turned their preparation against them. They had consolidated defenses around standard entry points. That meant they had weakened coverage in areas they deemed impossible to assault. We exploited those gaps. Senior Chief Rourke raised his hand. Ma'am, the decision to use Team 1 as a diversion force was the riskiest call I have ever seen. How did you know we could hold long enough? Elena met his eyes. I do not know, Senior Chief. I believe you could based on your training and capability. But certainty is a luxury combat never provides. I made the best tactical decision available with the information I had. The fact that it succeeded does not mean it was guaranteed to succeed. The room absorbed this honesty. Warriors respected leaders who admitted uncertainty rather than pretending to omniscience. The mission succeeded because every operator executed flawlessly under conditions that were far worse than planned, Elena continued. Team 1 held a position that should have been overrun. Team 2 secured hostages while under continuous fire. The medical team treated wounded while still in the danger zone. Communication between teams remained clear despite chaos. Every single person did their job at the highest level. She pulled up casualty reports. We had 3 wounded operators. Specialist Martinez has a fractured radius that will require 6 weeks recovery. Petty Officer Fletcher has soft tissue damage that will heal in 2 weeks. Petty Officer Davies has lacerations requiring stitches but is already cleared for duty. All 3 men refused medical evacuation until every hostage was secure. The room broke into spontaneous applause. The 3 wounded operators were present, and they stood awkwardly as their teammates honored their commitment. Elena waited for quiet. 214 hostages were recovered. 47 of them are children. 63 are over the age of 60. 8 required immediate medical intervention for pre-existing conditions. All are alive because this team refused to accept that the mission was impossible. Morrison stood. I have been authorized to share that the President of the United States personally called to thank everyone involved in this operation. The Secretary of Defense is recommending unit citations, and I am putting every one of you in for personal commendations. The room erupted in voices. Elena raised her hand for quiet. Gentlemen, awards are appropriate recognition, but they are not why we do this work. We do this work because Americans in danger deserve warriors who will not quit. We do this work because impossible is just another tactical problem to solve. We do this work because we're the people who run toward hell when everyone else is running away. She paused, gathering her thoughts. I lost 3 teammates in Mogadishu. Master Chief Rivera, Senior Chief Takahashi, Chief Petty Officer Williams. They died because I made a decision to launch a mission with incomplete intelligence and insufficient support. I have carried that weight for 5 years. The room was absolutely silent. Elena's voice remained steady, but emotion leaked through. This mission in Yemen was the first time since Mogadishu that I have been able to bring everyone home, she said. Yes, we had wounded. Yes, it was close. But every operator who went and came out. That means everything to me. More than any award. More than any recognition. Bringing you all home means I can sleep tonight without seeing their faces. Shaw stood abruptly. Commander, permission to speak. Elena nodded. Ma'am, Shaw said, his voice carrying through the room. I want everyone here to know something. When I first saw you, I thought you were broken. I thought your career was over. I thought you had nothing left to contribute. I was wrong in every possible way. He moved to stand beside her at the front of the room. You are not broken, he continued. You are refined. Every limitation you carry has made you sharper, more creative, more determined. You see solutions others miss because you have had to find ways around obstacles your entire career. You are the best tactical mind in this command, not despite your injury, but because of what it has taught you about adaptation. The room erupted in agreement. Operators were standing, voices raised in support. Elena felt her throat tighten. Shaw was not finished. Before this mission, I believed that real warriors were defined by their physical capability. Now I know better. Real warriors are defined by their refusal to quit, by their commitment to the mission, by their willingness to find a way when no way seems to exist. Commander Voss embodies that more than anyone I have ever served with. Harris stood as well. I have one more thing to add, he said. Commander Voss asked if we could hold our position long enough to extract the hostages. The answer was yes, because we knew she would not ask us to do something she had not already done herself. She held a position in Mogadishu with shattered legs and no support. If she could do that, we could damn sure hold a breach point for 4 minutes. Senior Chief Rourke stood. Ma'am, my team completed the wall preparation that made this mission possible. We spent 90 minutes cutting fracture lines in that concrete, knowing that if we were detected, the entire operation would fail. We did it because we trusted your plan completely. That trust was earned by your record and your sacrifice. One by one, every operator in the room stood. The message was clear. Elena Voss had their respect, their trust, and their gratitude. The woman they had underestimated had become the leader they would follow anywhere. Elena looked around the room at the faces of warriors who had learned the same lesson she had learned in Mogadishu. Strength comes in many forms. Courage is not the absence of limitation, but the refusal to let limitation stop you. And the most dangerous operators are the ones who have been underestimated. Thank you, she said quietly. All of you. Now, let us make sure we document everything we learned so the next team has every advantage we can give them. The debriefing continued for 3 more hours. Every tactical decision was examined. Every adaptation was analyzed. Every moment of the mission was broken down into lessons that could be taught. This was how the SEAL community evolved. Not by pretending missions went perfectly, but by studying every detail until the knowledge became institutional. When the room finally emptied, only Elena, Morrison, Harris, and Shaw remained. The Admiral approached Elena with a folder. Commander, he said, I have here the paperwork for your Navy Cross citation from Mogadishu. It has been declassified. The ceremony will be held next month. I would be honored to present it. Elena took the folder, but did not open it. Sir, I appreciate the recognition, but the only ceremony that matters to me happened today. Bringing every operator home alive. That is my real award. Morrison smiled. I expected you would say that, but you're getting the ceremony anyway. Those 3 men who died in Mogadishu deserve to have their story told. Your ceremony honors them as much as you. Elena nodded slowly. For them. Yes, sir. I can accept that. As Morrison left, Shaw approached. Commander, he said, I owe you more than an apology. I owe you my career. Maybe my life. Thank you for giving me the chance to learn better. Elena looked at the young officer who had transformed from arrogant to humble. Lieutenant, you earned your place on this team through your actions under fire. The man who mocked me 2 weeks ago would not have held that breach. The man who held that breach is the warrior you chose to become. That is all on you. Shaw extended his hand. His grip was firm despite the injured shoulder. Ma'am, if you ever need anything, ever, I am there. Harris waited until Shaw left before speaking. Commander, what you said about bringing everyone home, about sleeping without seeing their faces. I understand that. I lost 2 men in Fallujah. I still see them. It never goes away, Elena said softly. But missions like today help, knowing that we learned from the losses, that we got better, that their deaths were not meaningless. Harris nodded. Thank you for teaching us how to do this better. After they left, Elena sat alone in the empty briefing room. Her crutches leaned against the chair. Her body ached from the stress of commanding the mission remotely. But for the first time in 5 years, the weight on her chest felt lighter. 214 people were alive. 16 operators had come home. The mission that should have failed had succeeded. And somewhere, she hoped, Rivera and Takahashi and Williams knew that their sacrifice had taught her how to bring others home safely. She stood, gathered her crutches, and walked out of the briefing room. The hallway was empty. Her footsteps echoed in the silence. But she walked with her head high, knowing that she had proven once again that warriors are not defined by what they have lost, but by what they refuse to stop fighting for. 3 weeks after the Yemen mission, Elena stood in her quarters, staring at the dress uniform laid out on her bed. The Navy Cross ceremony was scheduled for 1,400 hours. Every instinct told her to find a way out of it. Awards ceremonies felt like performance art, public displays that reduced genuine sacrifice to photo opportunities and speeches. But Admiral Morrison had been right. This was not about her. This was about Rivera, Takahashi, and Williams. This was about ensuring their names were remembered, their sacrifice honored. For them, she would endure the ceremony. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Come in, she called. Lieutenant Shaw entered, also in dress uniform. His arm was out of the sling now, though he still favored it slightly. Ma'am, he said, I wanted to check if you needed anything before the ceremony. Elena gestured to the uniform. Help me figure out how to wear all this hardware without looking like I am trying too hard. Shaw smiled. That is impossible, ma'am. You have earned every ribbon and medal. Wearing them is not trying too hard. It is honoring the service that earned them. He moved to help her arrange the ribbons in proper order. As they worked, Shaw spoke quietly. Commander, I need to tell you something. After Yemen, after seeing what you accomplished, I requested a meeting with Admiral Morrison. Elena glanced at him. About what? About my career path, Shaw said. I told him that I want to transition from operational teams to training and development. I want to teach the next generation what you taught me. That adaptation matters more than tradition. That innovation saves lives. That physical capability is only one measure of a warrior. Elena stopped arranging ribbons. That is a significant career shift, Lieutenant. Are you certain? Shaw nodded. I have spent 10 years kicking in doors. I'm good at it. But you show me that the greatest impact is not always made on the battlefield. It is made in the planning rooms, in the development of doctrine, in teaching others to think differently. What did the Admiral say? That he would support the transition if you agreed to take me on as your primary assistant in the Tactical Development Division. Shaw met her eyes. Yeah, I'm asking you, Mom, will you let me work with you? Will you teach me how to do what you do? Elena studied the young officer who had transformed so completely. You understand that working in development is not glamorous. No more combat deployments. No more direct action. Just endless planning sessions, war games, and fighting institutional resistance to change. Shaw smiled. Sounds perfect, Mom. When do I start? After the ceremony, Elena said, "Welcome to the team, Lieutenant." They finished with the uniform in comfortable silence. When Elena was ready, Shaw stepped back and saluted. "You look like what you are, Commander. A warrior who refused to quit." The ceremony was held in the main auditorium at Naval Special Warfare Command. Elena entered through a side door to avoid the crowd gathering in the lobby. But as she made her way to the staging area, she was intercepted by a group of people she had not expected to see. "Commander Voss?" A woman in her 60s approached, tears already streaming down her face. "I am Margaret Rivera, Carlos's mother." Elena felt her breath catch. "Mrs. Rivera, I did not know you would be here. Admiral Morrison invited us," the woman said. She gestured to the others behind her. The families of Master Chief Rivera, Senior Chief Takahashi, and Chief Petty Officer Williams. "We wanted to be here. We wanted to thank you." "Thank me?" Elena's voice came out rough. "Mrs. Rivera, your son died because of my decisions. Because I launched a mission that Command had forbidden. Because I ordered him to leave me behind." Margaret Rivera took Elena's hands in her own. "No, my son died doing exactly what he trained to do. He died saving 52 innocent people. He died knowing that his team leader would have given anything to trade places with him. Carlos loved being a SEAL more than anything except his family. You gave him the chance to die as he lived. With purpose, with courage, with his brothers." An elderly Japanese man stepped forward. "I am Kenji Takahashi," he said with a slight accent. "My son wrote to me about you many times, Commander. He said you were the finest officer he ever served under. He said if he ever died in service, he hoped it would be on a mission that mattered. You gave him that." A younger woman, perhaps 30, approached next. "I am Sarah Williams," she said, "David's sister. He talked about Mogadishu afterward before the injuries took him. He said you fought beside them even after your legs were shattered. He said you killed men with your bare hands to protect the team's withdrawal. He said you were the bravest person he ever knew." Elena's carefully maintained composure cracked. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I am so sorry I could not bring them home." Margaret Rivera pulled Elena into a hug. "You brought 52 people home," she said fiercely. "You brought my son's honor home. You brought his sacrifice meaning. That is everything a mother could ask for." The other families surrounded Elena, offering embraces and words of forgiveness she had never sought but desperately needed. For 5 years, she had carried their deaths as a failure. These families were trying to tell her it had been a victory purchased at terrible cost. Admiral Morrison appeared in the doorway. "It is time," he said gently. Elena wiped her eyes and straightened her uniform. The families took seats in the front row. Elena moved to the staging area, her crutches clicking softly against the polished floor. The auditorium was packed, every seat filled with SEALs, support personnel, and senior officers. Elena saw Harris and his entire team in the third row. Senior Chief Rourke sat with the other operators from Yemen. Shaw was in the front row beside the families. Morrison took the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered to present the Navy Cross to Commander Elena Voss for extraordinary heroism in combat operations in Mogadishu, Somalia. This award has been delayed due to classification requirements. The mission is now declassified and the full story can be told." He recounted the operation in detail. The unauthorized launch, the impossible odds, the building collapse, Elena's defense while unable to walk, the lives saved and the lives lost. His voice never wavered, but Elena saw emotion in his eyes. Commander Voss demonstrated the highest standards of courage and tactical brilliance. Morrison concluded. She saved 52 lives while sustaining injuries that would have killed most warriors. She continued fighting after her body had failed, using only her mind and her will. She embodies everything we aspire to be. Elena moved to the front using her crutches. Morrison opened the citation case and removed the Navy cross, a bronze cross suspended from a blue and white ribbon. He placed it around her neck with precise care. The room erupted in applause. Every person stood. The sound was overwhelming. Elena stood at attention, fighting tears, overwhelmed by recognition she had spent 5 years avoiding. Morrison leaned close. "They are not applauding the medal," he whispered. "They are applauding you. The warrior who survived. The leader who brought others home. The woman who turned limitation into strength. Accept it, Commander. You earned this." Elena looked out at the standing ovation. She saw the Yemen operators who had trusted her plan. She saw the families of the men who had died. She saw Shaw, who had learned to look past her crutches to see her capability. She saw a room full of warriors who understood that strength comes in many forms. "Thank you," she said, her voice amplified by the microphone. "Thank you for this honor. But I want to be clear about something. This medal represents 3 men who died doing their duty. Master Chief Carlos Rivera, Senior Chief Kenji Takahashi, Chief Petty Officer David Williams. They were better warriors than I will ever be. They made the ultimate sacrifice so others could live. This medal belongs to them." She turned to the families in the front row. "It belongs to their families who gave their sons and brothers to service. It belongs to every operator who faces impossible odds and refuses to quit. It belongs to everyone who has learned that our greatest strengths often emerge from our deepest wounds." The applause grew louder. Elena saw tears on the faces of hardened SEALs who had seen combat across multiple continents. She saw pride on Morrison's face. She saw peace on the faces of the families. After the ceremony, a reception was held in the adjacent hall. Elena found herself surrounded by well-wishers, but she navigated through them to reach the families. She spent an hour listening to stories about Rivera, Takahashi, and Williams, learning about their childhoods, their dreams, their lives beyond the uniform. Margaret Rivera showed her photos on her phone. Carlos at his high school graduation. Carlos on his wedding day. Carlos holding his infant daughter, who is now 5 years old, and asking questions about the daddy she barely remembered. "He will be so proud of what you have done," Margaret said. "Proud that you kept fighting. Proud that you took the lessons from Mogadishu and used them to save others. Proud that you honored his sacrifice by refusing to let it break you." "I think about him every day," Elena admitted. "All 3 of them. Every tactical decision I make, I ask myself what Rivera would suggest. Every time I review a plan, I imagine Takahashi identifying the weak points. Every time I need courage, I remember Williams staying with me when he could have escaped. Then they're still serving," Margaret said. "Still protecting, still making a difference. That is all any warrior can hope for, to matter beyond their own life." As the reception wound down, Shaw approached with Lieutenant Commander Harris. "Commander," Harris said, "the teams are planning a training exercise next month. New doctrine implementation. We would like you to observe and provide feedback." "I will be there," Elena said. Shaw added, "And ma'am, I started reviewing the tactical framework for urban operations in dense civilian areas. I have some ideas about modifications that might improve extraction protocols." Elena smiled. "Write them up. We will review them together next week." As they walked away, Morrison appeared at her side. "You have built something remarkable, Commander. A new generation of tactical thinkers who understand that adaptation is survival. Leaders who value innovation over tradition. Warriors who know that their greatest weapon is their mind." Elena looked around the room at the operators engaged in animated discussion, already thinking about the next mission, the next challenge, the next opportunity to prove that impossible is just another problem to solve. "Thank you, sir," she said, "for believing in me when others did not, for giving me the chance to prove that warriors do not have expiration dates, for understanding that service takes many forms." Morrison smiled. "Commander, you proved that all on your own. I just had the good sense to get out of your way and let you work." That evening, Elena returned to her quarters and carefully placed the Navy Cross in a display case alongside her other decorations. But it was not the medal she studied as she prepared for sleep. It was the photograph beside it. Rivera, Takahashi, and Williams, grinning at the camera, young and alive and full of purpose. I brought them all home this time, she whispered to the photograph. 214 people. 16 operators. Everyone came back. I hope that means something. I hope you'll be proud. In the quiet of her room, with the weight of the Navy Cross still fresh around her neck, Elena Voss finally allowed herself to believe that she had earned the right to keep fighting. That her service still mattered. That the crutches she carried were not symbols of limitation, but proof of determination. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new missions, new opportunities to prove that the most dangerous warriors are the ones who refuse to accept defeat. But tonight, she could rest knowing that she had honored the fallen by bringing the living home safely. The crutches leaned against the wall, ready for whatever came next. Just like Elena herself. Scarred, adapted, unbroken. 2 months after the Navy Cross ceremony, Elena stood in the training facility overlooking an obstacle course where 20 SEAL candidates were struggling through a tactical problem. Lieutenant Shaw stood beside her, tablet in hand, observing the same exercise with the analytical focus she had taught him. "They are approaching it exactly how we would have 5 years ago," Shaw observed. "Standard breach protocol. Predictable entry points. The opposition force is going to tear them apart." Elena nodded. "Let them fail. Failure is the best teacher." Below, the candidates executed their assault with textbook precision. And just as Shaw predicted, the opposition force systematically dismantled their approach. Within 90 seconds, the exercise was called. All candidates were marked as casualties. The senior instructor, a grizzled master chief named Dixon, called the candidates to formation. His voice carried up to the observation deck where Elena and Shaw watched. "That was pathetic. You followed doctrine perfectly, and you all died perfectly. Commander Voss, would you care to explain to these future SEALs why perfect execution of doctrine just got them killed?" Elena made her way down to the training floor, her crutches navigating the metal stairs with practiced ease. The candidates watched her approach with expressions ranging from curiosity to poorly concealed skepticism. She recognized that look. She had seen it on Shaw's face 2 months ago. "Who can tell me what went wrong?" Elena asked, positioning herself in front of the formation. A young candidate raised his hand. "Ma'am, the opposition force anticipated our approach. They had countermeasures in place for every standard entry point." "Correct," Elena said. "Why did they anticipate your approach?" "Because we followed standard doctrine," another candidate offered. "Also correct," Elena said. "You did everything by the book. You executed flawlessly. You failed completely. Does anyone understand why?" The candidates exchanged uncertain glances. Finally, one spoke up. "Ma'am, are you saying doctrine is wrong?" Elena smiled. "No, I am saying doctrine is a starting point, not a destination. Doctrine gives you fundamentals. But enemies study doctrine too. They prepare for it. They build defenses around it. If you follow doctrine rigidly, you become predictable. Predictability in combat is death." She moved to the tactical board and pulled up the exercise layout. "You saw 4 entry points to this structure. You assigned teams to the 3 most obvious ones. You left the 4th uncovered because doctrine says it is not viable." "Why is it not viable?" "Too narrow," a candidate responded. "Only 1 man at a time could pass through. Leaves the team vulnerable to concentrated fire." "Excellent analysis," Elena said. "Now tell me this. If the enemy believes that entry point is not viable, where will they position their forces?" Silence. Then understanding began to dawn on several faces. "They will not defend it heavily," a candidate said slowly. "They will focus on the viable entry points, which means the supposedly non-viable entry point becomes your greatest advantage," Elena said. "Yes, only 1 man can pass through at a time. But if the enemy is not watching that point, 1 man is all you need to establish a foothold. Once you're inside, you can open the other entry point from within." Master Chief Dixon stepped forward. Commander Voss used this exact approach in Yemen. The enemy had fortified every standard breach point, so she found an approach they dismissed as impossible and made it work. Elena pulled up helmet camera footage from the Yemen mission. "Watch Team 2's approach," she said. Rope assault up an exterior wall to third-floor windows. No doctrine recommends this. It violates every principle of using covered approaches and minimizing exposure. Why did it work? Because the enemy was not expecting it, a candidate said, his voice filled with realization. Exactly, Elena confirmed. The mission succeeded because we made the enemy defend against attacks they had not prepared for. We turned their assumptions into vulnerabilities. She spent the next hour walking the candidates through the Yemen operation, breaking down each decision point where doctrine was adapted or abandoned entirely. Shah interjected with observations from his ground perspective, describing the moment-bimit reality of executing an unconventional plan under fire. When Elena finished, one candidate raised his hand. "Ma'am, how do we learn to think like this? How do we know when to follow doctrine and when to abandon it?" "That is the question every tactical leader must answer," Elena said. "And there is no formula. It requires understanding doctrine so thoroughly that you know why each element exists. Then it requires assessing each unique situation and asking whether those reasons still apply. Sometimes doctrine is exactly right. Sometimes it needs modification. Sometimes it needs to be thrown out entirely." Another candidate spoke up. "Ma'am, with respect, this sounds like it requires years of experience to develop that judgment." "You are correct," Elena said, "which is why we're implementing a new training protocol. You will spend the next phase studying failed missions, understanding why they failed, analyzing what assumptions led to those failures. You will run exercises where following doctrine guarantees failure and adapting guarantees success. You will learn to question, to analyze, to innovate." Master Chief Dixon addressed the formation. "Commander Voss has revolutionized how we approach tactical planning. Her framework has been adopted across naval special warfare. You are the first class to receive this training from the beginning. You're being taught to think, not just to execute." Over the following weeks, Elena and Shaw developed a comprehensive curriculum. They brought in operators who had executed unconventional missions. They analyzed historical operations from Vietnam to Iraq, identifying patterns of success and failure. They created exercises specifically designed to punish rigid thinking and reward innovation. One afternoon, Admiral Morrison visited the training facility. He watched as candidates struggled through a scenario where every standard approach had been deliberately countered. Elena and Shaw provided minimal guidance, forcing the candidates to work through the problem themselves. Finally, one team tried something completely unorthodox. Instead of breaching the target building, they convinced the opposition force that the building was structurally compromised, triggering an evacuation that brought the targets directly to them. Morrison laughed out loud. "That is brilliant. Completely insane, but brilliant. Elena smilet. They are learning, sir." That team failed this same exercise 4 times before they stopped trying to breach and started thinking about how to manipulate the enemy's behavior. The Admiral gestured for Elena and Shaw to join him in the observation room. When they were alone, he spoke seriously. "Commander, I have been authorized to offer you a promotion to captain and a permanent position as Director of Tactical Innovation for Naval Special Warfare. This would give you authority to shape training and doctrine across all SEAL teams." Elena was quiet for a moment. "Sir, that is an incredible honor." "I sense a but coming," Morrison said. "Not a but," Elena replied. "A request. Lieutenant Shaw has proven himself invaluable in developing this curriculum. If I accept the position, I want him officially assigned as Deputy Director. This cannot be a one-person operation. It needs to be a team building institutional knowledge." Morrison nodded. "Agreed. Lieutenant Shaw will be promoted to Lieutenant Commander and assigned as your deputy." "What else?" "I want direct access to after-action reports from all teams," Elena said. "Real-time if possible. Every mission is a learning opportunity. Every failure is a chance to improve. Every success is a technique to study and disseminate." "You will have it," Morrison confirmed. "Anything else?" Elena looked through the window at the candidates below. "I want quarterly rotations where operational team leaders come through this facility to teach. Not senior officers. the lieutenants and chiefs who are actually planning and executing missions. They need to share what is working in the field. This cannot become an ivory tower divorced from reality. Morrison extended his hand. Captain Voss, you have a deal. Welcome to your new command. That evening, Elena and Shaw sat in the planning office reviewing the day's training outcomes. Shaw was making notes on candidate performance, identifying which operators showed natural aptitude for adaptive thinking. You know what I realized today? Shaw said, when I first saw you, I thought the Navy had made a mistake letting you stay on active duty. I thought you should have been medically retired. I was completely wrong. Elena glanced up from her work. You learned better. That is what matters. No, Shaw said. I was wrong about what the mistake was. The mistake would have been letting you go. You have saved more lives from this planning office than most operators save in entire careers. You have changed how we train, how we think, how we approach impossible problems. He gestured to the training facility beyond the window. Those candidates down there will go on to lead teams. They will face situations we cannot predict, but they will face them with the tools you developed, with the mindset you taught them. Your impact will multiply across every mission they run for the next 20 years. Elena set down her tablet. Lieutenant Commander Shaw, are you going soft on me? Shaw grinned. Just recognizing excellence when I see it, ma'am. Something I should have done the day we met. They returned to their work in comfortable silence. Outside, the sun was setting over the obstacle course. The candidates had secured their equipment and were heading to barracks, exhausted from a day of being challenged to think rather than simply execute. Elena's phone buzzed. A message from Margaret Rivera. The text included a photo of Carlos Rivera's daughter, now 5 years old, wearing a miniature SEAL t-shirt. The caption read, she says she wants to be just like her daddy, and just like Commander Voss. Thank you for being an example of strength. Elena showed the photo to Shaw. This is why we do it, she said quietly. Not for the medals, not for the recognition, for the next generation. So they learn from our mistakes. So they carry forward what we learned through pain and loss. Shaw studied the photo. Ma'am, that little girl is going to grow up in a world where female SEAL candidates are not unusual, where disabled veterans are not dismissed, where strength is measured by determination rather than physical perfection. You helped create that world. Elena looked at her crutches leaning against the desk. Not me alone. Everyone who refused to accept that their service was over when their body changed. Everyone who found new ways to contribute. Everyone who proved that warriors are defined by their minds and spirits, not just their muscles. She pulled up the training schedule for the next month. More candidates, more exercises, more opportunities to shape the future of naval special warfare. The work was endless, but it mattered. Every lesson she taught could save lives downstream. Every operator she trained to think adaptively could become the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. Morrison appeared in the doorway. Captain Voss, he said, using her new rank. I have your first assignment. SEAL Team 7 is deploying to Africa next month. They have requested that you personally review their operational plans before launch. They want the Commander Voss treatment. The Commander Voss treatment? Elena raised an eyebrow. That is what they are calling it, Morrison said with amusement. They want you to tear their plan apart, find every assumption, identify every predictable element, and show them how the enemy will exploit it. Then they want you to help them rebuild it into something the enemy will not see coming. Elena smiled. Tell them I will need 3 days with their team leaders, full access to intelligence, and permission to make them very uncomfortable. Morrison laughed. They are expecting nothing less. He paused at the door. Elena, when I recruited you to stay in the Navy after your injury, I knew you had value. But I had no idea you would transform the entire command. You have exceeded every expectation. After he left, Shaw looked at Elena with respect. 3 days to revolutionize another team's approach. No pressure. Elena reached for her crutches and stood. That is what we do, Lieutenant Commander. We take impossible expectations and we find ways to exceed them. SEAL Team 7 has no idea what they are in for. As they left the office, Elena paused to look back at the training facility one more time. Somewhere in those barracks were future team leaders who would face impossible odds, who would need to adapt or die, who would carry forward the lessons learned through blood and sacrifice. She had lost Rivera, Takahashi, and Williams, but their legacy lived on in every operator who learned to think beyond doctrine. Their sacrifice had meaning because it had taught her how to save others, and that knowledge was now being passed to the next generation. The crutches clicked against the floor as she walked. Once, she had seen them as symbols of limitation. Now, she understood they were symbols of adaptation. Proof that warriors find ways to keep fighting no matter what obstacles they face. And tomorrow, she would teach SEAL Team 7 the same lesson she had taught Shaw and the candidates. That the most dangerous warriors are not the strongest or the fastest. They're the ones who refuse to accept that any problem is truly impossible. 6 months after becoming Director of Tactical Innovation, Elena stood in the same briefing room where her journey had begun. But this time, she was not the one being mocked or doubted. She was the one conducting the final evaluation for the candidates who had completed her revolutionary training program. The room was filled with 23 SEAL candidates who had survived the most challenging curriculum naval special warfare had ever implemented. They sat at attention, eyes forward, waiting to learn if they had earned the right to join operational teams. Admiral Morrison entered, and the room snapped to even sharper attention. He moved to the front and stood beside Elena. "Gentlemen," he began, "you have completed a program that did not exist a year ago. Captain Voss has put you through scenarios designed to break rigid thinking. She has forced you to question every assumption. She has taught you that doctrine is a tool, not a cage." He gestured to Elena. "Captain, they are yours." Elena moved to the center of the room, her crutches making their familiar sound against the floor. 6 months ago, that sound had triggered mockery. Now it triggered respect. "Thank you, Admiral." She looked at the candidates. "You came here believing that becoming a SEAL meant mastering specific skills. Shooting, breaching, close quarters combat, tactical movement. You have mastered those skills. But that is not why you are here for final evaluation." She pulled up a tactical scenario on the main display. 3 weeks ago, I gave each of you an impossible mission. Hostage rescue in a compound designed to counter every approach we have ever used. You were told the mission was a training exercise. It was not. The candidates stirred slightly. Elena continued. "The scenario I gave you was based on real intelligence about a real compound in Syria where 37 aid workers are currently being held. I told you it was theoretical. I wanted to see what you would develop without the pressure of knowing lives depended on your plans." The room went completely silent. Elena pulled up the first candidate's tactical approach. "Petty Officer Chun, your plan involved a subsurface approach through the compound's water system. Unconventional. Creative. It would work. Your plan has been forwarded to the operational team preparing for that mission." Chin's eyes widened in shock. Elena moved to the next plan. "Lieutenant Junior Grade Williams, you proposed a psychological operation to make the terrorists believe the compound was under drone surveillance, forcing them to move hostages to a less secure location. Also brilliant. Also forwarded to the operational team." She went through each candidate's approach, highlighting the innovative elements, the creative problem-solving, the willingness to abandon standard doctrine in favor of mission-specific solutions. Every single plan had merit. Every single candidate had demonstrated the adaptive thinking that separated adequate operators from exceptional ones. "All 23 of your plans have been reviewed by the operational team," Elena said. "They are incorporating elements from each one into a comprehensive approach. Your training exercise will save real lives. That is the standard you are being held to now. Everything you do, every plan you create, every mission you run, has real consequences. Are you ready for that responsibility?" The candidates responded in unison. "Yes, ma'am." Morrison stepped forward. "Then it is my honor to inform you that all 23 candidates have passed final evaluation. You will be assigned to operational teams immediately. You are the first class to graduate from Captain Voss's program. You represent the future of naval special warfare. Do not waste this opportunity." After the ceremony, As candidates celebrated and contacted families, Lieutenant Commander Shaw approached Elena with a tablet. "Ma'am, we just received after-action reports from 3 missions that use your tactical framework. All 3 succeeded with 0 friendly casualties. Hostage recovery rates were 100%. Elena took the tablet and reviewed the reports. Each mission commander had credited the adaptive planning methodology with success. Each one had noted that standard doctrine would have failed in their specific circumstances. "How many lives is that now?" she asked quietly. Shaw checked his records. "Since Yemen, 18 missions using your framework. 463 hostages recovered. 27 operators who would likely have been casualties using standard approaches came home without serious injury. That is not counting the downstream effects of training. Every operator you teach will run dozens of missions over their career." Elena stared at the numbers. 463 people alive because someone had been willing to question doctrine. 27 warriors who had not become statistics. It was more than she had dared hope for when she had first refused medical retirement. A voice interrupted her thoughts. "Captain Voss?" She turned to see a young woman in civilian clothes, perhaps 19 years old, standing nervously in the doorway. "I hope this is okay." The Admiral said, "I could come back to meet you." Elena studied the young woman's face and felt recognition dawn. "You are Carlos Rivera's daughter." The young woman nodded. "Sofia Rivera, Mom. My grandmother told me you would be here today. I wanted to meet the woman my father died protecting. The woman who made his sacrifice means something." Elena felt her throat tighten. "Your father was the finest warrior I ever served with, Sofia. He saved my life more times than I can count." Sofia stepped closer. "My grandmother showed me the photo you sent, the one of you receiving the Navy Cross. She told me about Mogadishu, about how you kept fighting even after you could not walk, about how you have spent 5 years making sure other families do not lose their fathers the way I lost mine. I wish I could have brought him home," Elena said softly. Sofia shook her head. "Ma'am, my father chose to be a SEAL. He knew the risks. What matters is that his death was not wasted. Grandmother told me you have saved hundreds of people using the lessons you learned from that mission. That means my father's sacrifice created a legacy that keeps growing." The young woman pulled an envelope from her bag. "I am applying to the Naval Academy," she said. "I want to become a SEAL. The first female SEAL in my family. I wrote my application essay about you, about how you proved that strength comes from determination, not just physical ability, about how the most important battles are often fought after everyone thinks you are defeated." Elena took the envelope with trembling hands. "Sofia, your father would be incredibly proud of you. Will you write me a letter of recommendation?" Sofia asked. "I know I'm asking a lot, but having your support would mean everything." Elena met the young woman's eyes and saw Carlos Rivera's determination staring back at her. "I would be honored," she said, "but I need you to understand something. This path is brutal. You will be doubted, dismissed, underestimated. People will see a woman and assume you cannot do what men do. You will have to prove yourself every single day." Sofia smiled. "That sounds exactly like what you faced when you came back with crutches. If you could do it, so can I." After Sofia left, Shaw appeared at Elena's shoulder. "Did that just happen? Is Rivera's daughter really applying to become a SEAL?" Elena nodded, still holding the envelope. "The legacy continues. Rivera saved 52 people in Mogadishu. Now his daughter wants to save others. The chain is unbroken." That evening, Elena returned to her office and found a package waiting on her desk. No return address. She opened it carefully and found a wooden display case containing 3 military dog tags. Rivera, Takahashi, Williams. A note was tucked inside. "Captain Voss, our sons served together. They died together. They saved 52 lives together. We wanted you to have these. You have honored their memory by ensuring their sacrifice taught lessons that keep saving lives. You have proven that warriors never truly die as long as someone carries forward what they knew. Thank you for being that someone. Signed, the families." Elena placed the dog tags on her desk beside the photograph she had carried for 5 years. 3 warriors who had trusted her leadership. 3 families who had forgiven her for surviving when their loved ones had not. 3 legacies that lived on in every operator she trained. Shaw knocked and entered. "Ma'am, SEAL Team 7 is requesting final consultation before their Africa deployment. And we have 6 more teams asking for training on the adaptive framework. Your calendar is completely full for the next 4 months." "Good," Elena said. "That means we are making a difference." Shaw hesitated. "Ma'am, do you ever think about what would have happened if you had accepted medical retirement? If you had listened to everyone who said your service was over?" Elena looked at her crutches leaning against the wall. "Every single day," she admitted. "And every single day, I'm grateful I refused to quit. Because quitting would have meant Rivera, Takahashi, and Williams died for nothing. It would have meant those 463 hostages stayed captive. It would have meant 27 operators became casualties. It would have meant Sofia Rivera had no example to follow." She stood and reached for her crutches. "Service is not about what your body can do, Shaw. It is about what your mind refuses to stop fighting for. I learned that in Mogadishu. I proved it in Yemen. And now I teach it to every operator who walks through that training facility." As they left the office, Elena paused at the doorway and looked back one more time. The Navy cross hung on the wall beside the dog tags and the photograph. Symbols of sacrifice and survival. Proof that the hardest battles are often fought after the obvious war is over. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new missions, new operators who needed to learn that doctrine is a starting point and innovation is survival. But tonight, Elena allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. She had turned limitation into strength. She had transformed loss into legacy. She had proven that the warrior spirit cannot be broken by injury or age or doubt. The SEALs who had laughed at her crutches now sought her guidance. The career that should have ended in medical retirement had become more impactful than 20 years of operational deployments. The woman who had been dismissed as broken had rebuilt herself into something stronger than she had ever been before. She walked down the hallway toward the parking lot, her crutches clicking rhythmically against the floor. That sound, once a source of shame, had become her signature. A reminder that adaptation is survival, that strength comes in many forms, that the most dangerous warriors are the ones who refuse to accept defeat. Behind her, the lights in the Tactical Innovation Center stayed on. Somewhere in those rooms, the next generation of SEAL operators was learning to think beyond doctrine, learning to question assumptions, learning to turn impossible odds into achievable missions. And at the center of it all was a woman with crutches who had proven that you do not need to walk normally to change the world. You just need to refuse to stop moving forward. If you enjoyed this story, please drop a comment and let us know your favorite part, character, or if you have had a similar situation happen to you before. Share your thoughts about moments that resonated with you, or tell us about someone you know who showed hidden strength when others doubted them. Elena Voss had started as a warrior dismissed because of her injuries. She had become a legend because of what those injuries had taught her. And her legacy would continue in every operator who learned that the real measure of a warrior is not what they have lost, but what they refuse to stop fighting for. The extraction convoy rolled through the pre-dawn darkness, headlights cutting through dust that hung in the air like fog. Elena remained in the Tactical Operations Center, watching the live feeds as 16 operators and 214 hostages moved toward the secure airfield 40 kilometers from the compound. "Commander," the communication specialist said, "all vehicles report green status. ETA to airfield is 23 minutes. Elena kept her eyes on the thermal displays. The convoy was stretched across 2 kilometers of desert road, vulnerable to ambush or pursuit. Until every person was airborne and out of hostile territory, the mission remained active. Admiral Morrison stood beside her, arms crossed. "You should feel proud, Commander. This is a textbook extraction." "We are not extracted yet, sir," Elena replied quietly. "The terrorists will respond once they assess their losses. We need everyone in the air before that happens." The tension in the operations center remained high. Analysts monitored communications intercepts, listening for any indication that enemy forces were mobilizing. The silence was encouraging but fragile. Elena's phone buzzed. A secure message from Lieutenant Commander Harris. Hostages are in good condition. Medical team is treating minor injuries. Morale is high. Several hostages asking who planned the rescue. What should I tell them? Elena typed back. Tell them it was a team effort. Nothing more. Shaw sent a message moments later. Team 1 has 3 wounded, but all are stable. Martinez is complaining that his broken arm will keep him out of the next deployment. Fletcher and Davies already arguing about who killed more hostiles. Everyone accounted for and in good spirits. Elena allowed herself a small smile. Warriors dealt with trauma through dark humor and competitive bravado. It was healthier than the alternative. Convoy approaching airfield perimeter, the specialist reported. Security teams confirmed no hostile activity in the area. On the feeds, Elena watched the vehicles enter the airfield compound. C-17 transport aircraft waited with engines running, ready for immediate departure. The hostages began disembarking, helped by medical personnel who had been standing by. Children first. Elena heard Harris order over the comms. Then elderly. Then everyone else. Operators load last. She watched the organized chaos of evacuation. Families staying together. Medical cases being prioritized. The SEAL teams maintaining security perimeter while ensuring every hostage boarded safely. This was the part of the mission that doctrine covered extensively, and the teams executed it with mechanical precision. First aircraft is loaded, the specialist said. 108 hostages plus medical team. Preparing for takeoff. Elena watched the massive aircraft taxi and lift off, carrying more than half the rescued hostages toward safety. The second aircraft began boarding immediately. Admiral Morrison's phone rang. He answered, listened, and his expression darkened. Commander, we have a problem. Intelligence reports significant enemy force mobilizing 30 kilometers south of your convoy's position. Approximately 200 fighters with vehicle-mounted weapons. They're moving toward the airfield. Elena's mind raced through calculations. How long until they reach the airfield? Morrison relayed the question. Intelligence says 40 minutes at current speed. How long until second aircraft is loaded and airborne? Elena asked the specialist. Loading is proceeding. Estimate 18 minutes until wheels up. That left a 22-minute gap. More than enough time for an enemy force to reach the airfield and engage the second aircraft during takeoff or the ground teams during final evacuation. Get me Harris, Elena ordered. Harris's voice came through immediately. Go ahead, Commander. Enemy force inbound. 200 fighters. 40 minutes out. You need to expedite boarding and get that aircraft in the air. Once the hostages are loaded, your teams need to establish defensive perimeter and prepare for contact. Understood, Harris replied. His voice remained calm despite the new threat. We will be ready. Shaw's voice joined the channel. Commander, if they hit us during takeoff, that aircraft becomes a massive target. We should consider splitting the remaining hostages between 2 aircraft for redundancy. No time, Elena said. Intelligence, can we get air support to intercept that enemy force? Negative, Morrison answered after checking. Closest air assets are 60 minutes out. They cannot reach the airfield before the enemy does. Elena studied the airfield layout on her display. The single runway, the open approaches, the minimal defensive positions. If the enemy force arrived before the second aircraft departed, this would become a pitched battle with hostages still in the danger zone. All teams, Elena said, we are accelerating timeline. Hostages board immediately. No priority sequencing. Everyone on that aircraft now. Operators establish 360 security. Prepare for enemy contact during final evacuation. On the feeds, she watched the boarding process transform from organized to urgent. Hostages were guided quickly up the aircraft ramp. Children were carried. Elderly were assisted at a faster pace. The SEAL teams took defensive positions around the airfield perimeter. 10 minutes until aircraft is loaded, the specialist reported. 30 minutes until enemy force arrives, Morrison added. The math was better, but still tight. Elena watched the feeds, willing the boarding process to move faster without becoming chaotic. Rush too much and people could be injured. Move too slowly and everyone could be killed. Shaw's voice came through. Commander, we have visual on dust cloud to the south. Enemy vehicles approaching faster than estimated. Revised ETA is 25 minutes. Elena felt ice in her veins. Push the boarding, she ordered. Get everyone on that aircraft now. Teams prepare to collapse perimeter and load under fire if necessary. She watched the final hostages scramble aboard the C-17. The ramp began closing even as the last SEAL teams sprinted toward the aircraft. Medical personnel pulled the wounded operators inside. The pilot was already advancing throttle. All personnel aboard, Harris reported. We are buttoned up and rolling. The C-17 began its takeoff roll. On thermal imaging, Elena could see the enemy convoy closing from the south. The timing would be desperately close. Come on, she whispered, watching the aircraft accelerate down the runway. The C-17's nose lifted. The massive aircraft climbed into the dawn sky just as the first enemy vehicles appeared on the southern horizon. Small arms fire erupted from the approaching convoy, but the aircraft was already out of effective range. Second aircraft is clear, the specialist announced. All personnel safely airborne. Elena felt the tension drain from her shoulders. Morrison placed a hand on her back. Well done, Commander. Everyone is safe. Not everyone, Elena said quietly, thinking of the 3 wounded. But everyone is alive. That is what matters. Over the next 2 hours, Elena coordinated with the C-17 flight crews, ensuring medical care continued in flight and that landing arrangements were prepared at the secure base in Germany. She reviewed preliminary casualty assessments and began drafting the initial after-action summary. Commander, Morrison said as the operations center began standing down, you should get some rest. The formal debrief is not for another 12 hours. Elena shook her head. I need to review the mission footage. Identify what worked and what needs improvement. The next team should not have to learn these lessons the hard way. Morrison smiled. That is exactly what Rivera would have said. He never stopped analyzing, never stopped trying to improve. Elena looked up sharply. You knew Master Chief Rivera? I was his commanding officer early in his career, Morrison said. Before he made Master Chief. Before Mogadishu. He was one of the finest warriors I ever served with. And he believed in you completely. He told me once that you had the best tactical mind he had ever encountered. Elena's throat tightened. He never told me that. He would not have, Morrison said. Rivera believed actions mattered more than words. But after Mogadishu, after you were wounded, he made me promise something before he died. He made me promise that if you survived, I would make sure you stayed in the Navy. He said your value was not in your legs, but in your mind. He said the service needed you too much to let you go. Elena stared at the Admiral. You kept that promise. I did, Morrison confirmed. And Rivera was right. You have saved more lives from this command center than most operators save in a lifetime. You prove that warriors contribute in many ways. That adaptation is survival. That the fight continues even after the body breaks. Elena looked at the screens showing the empty compound in Yemen, the airfield now being abandoned by the last security teams, the C-17s carrying their precious cargo toward safety. Everything had worked. Against terrible odds, with compromised intelligence, facing an enemy that knew they were coming, the mission had succeeded. Sir, Elena said quietly, when you brief the president, make sure he knows this was not one person's success. 16 operators executed flawlessly under impossible conditions. Support teams provided critical intelligence. Medical personnel saved lives under fire. This was a team victory. Morrison nodded. I will make that clear. But I will also make clear that your tactical framework made the difference between success and catastrophic failure. Your innovation saved 214 lives today. After Morrison left, Elena sat alone in the operations center. The screens gradually went dark as systems powered down. The controlled chaos of active mission management gave way to quiet. She pulled out her phone and looked at the photograph she always carried. Rivera, Takahashi, and Williams. Dead for 5 years, but still present in every decision she made. We got them all home, she whispered to the photograph. All of them. Just like you taught me. Just like you would have done. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. She opened it hesitantly, remembering the threatening text from before the mission. But this message was different. It was from one of the rescued hostages. A simple message. Thank you for bringing us home. Thank you for not giving up on us. Thank you for proving that miracles still happen. Elena saved the message and added it to a growing file of similar notes. Proof that the work mattered, that the risk had been justified, that choosing to stay and fight had been the right decision. She gathered her crutches and stood. Her body ached from 12 hours of intense focus. Her legs throbbed from sitting too long. But her mind was clear and her purpose was certain. Tomorrow would bring the formal debriefing, the analysis, the lessons learned, the preparation for the next impossible mission. But tonight, she could rest knowing that 16 warriors had trusted her plan and come home alive. That 214 innocent people had been given their lives back. That the legacy of Mogadishu had been honored through success rather than repeated tragedy. Elena walked out of the operations center into the dawnlight. Somewhere over the Atlantic, two C-17s were carrying the fruits of perfect planning and courageous execution toward safety. And in offices around the world, other tactical planners would soon be studying this mission, learning from it, adapting it for their own impossible challenges. The fight never ended. The missions never stopped. But warriors like Elena Voss ensured that each mission learned from the last. That sacrifice taught lessons. That innovation saved lives. She climbed into her vehicle and drove toward her quarters. Tomorrow would demand everything she had. But tonight, she could sleep knowing she had brought them all home. Elena woke 6 hours later to her phone ringing. She reached for it instinctively, her tactical mind already processing potential emergencies before she was fully conscious. Commander Voss. Admiral Morrison's voice was unusually warm. I am sorry to wake you, but there is someone here who insists on speaking with you immediately. Who? Elena asked, checking the time. It was early afternoon. The Secretary of Defense, Morrison replied. He flew in to personally debrief the team. He wants to meet you first. Elena sat up quickly, ignoring the protest from her aching legs. Give me 20 minutes, sir. 15 minutes later, she entered Morrison's office in full uniform, her crutches moving efficiently across the polished floor. The Secretary of Defense stood when she entered, a tall man in his 60s with iron gray hair and the bearing of someone who had spent decades in positions of ultimate responsibility. Captain Voss, the secretary said, extending his hand. James Richardson. Thank you for making time on short notice. Elena shook his hand. Mr. Secretary, the honor is mine. Captain, I have read the preliminary after-action report from Yemen. I have reviewed your tactical framework. I have spoken with Admiral Morrison about your career trajectory. I am here to tell you that what you accomplished yesterday represents a paradigm shift in how we approach high-risk operations. Elena remained cautious. Thank you, sir. But the operators on the ground deserve the credit. They executed under extreme conditions. They executed your plan, Richardson countered. A plan that should not have worked. A plan that violated conventional doctrine at multiple points. A plan that succeeded because you understood something most tactical planners miss. The enemy studies our methods as carefully as we study theirs. He pulled up a tablet displaying statistics. In the past 5 years, hostage rescue operations have had a 72% success rate. That sounds acceptable until you realize it means 28% failure. Your framework, in 6 operational deployments, has achieved 100% success rate. 0 friendly fatalities. 98% hostage recovery rate. Those numbers demand attention. Elena shifted uncomfortably. Sir, 6 missions is a limited sample size. We have been fortunate. Fortune favors the prepared, Captain, Richardson said. Your preparation is what made the difference, which is why I am here to discuss your future role in the Department of Defense. Elena's pulse quickened. Sir? Richardson set down his tablet. Captain Voss, we are establishing a new joint task force focused on tactical innovation across all special operations branches. Not just SEALs, Army Special Forces, Marine Raiders, Air Force Special Tactics, Delta Force. We need someone to lead the development of adaptive frameworks that can be applied across different operational contexts. He paused. I want you to lead that task force, with a promotion to Rear Admiral and authority to implement changes across the entire special operations community. Elena felt like the air had been knocked from her lungs. Admiral Morrison was smiling in the corner of the room. Sir, she managed, I am honored. But I'm a tactical specialist, not a political operator. What you are describing requires someone who can navigate Pentagon bureaucracy, which is why you will have a full staff to handle administration, Richardson said. Your job is simple. Do what you did in Yemen. Identify assumptions. Question doctrine. Develop approaches that give our warriors advantages the enemy has not prepared for. Then teach those approaches to every special operator in the Department of Defense. Elena looked at Morrison. Sir, your thoughts? The Admiral stepped forward. Elena, you have transformed how naval special warfare approaches tactical planning. The Secretary is asking you to do the same across the entire special operations community. This is the logical extension of the work you have already been doing. What about my current responsibilities? Elena asked. The SEAL training program? Lieutenant Commander Shaw will assume primary responsibility there, Morrison said. He has proven himself more than capable. You trained him well. Elena's mind raced through implications. This was an opportunity to influence tactics at a scale she had never imagined. But it also meant leaving the direct work with operators. Trading Hansen training for strategic oversight. Mr. Secretary, Elena said carefully, I need to understand the scope. What authority would I have to implement changes? Direct authority over tactical doctrine development, Richardson replied. Budget authority for innovation programs. Access to all after-action reports from all branches. The ability to embed with operational teams to observe and advise. And most importantly, the backing of my office when you inevitably encounter resistance from people who do not like change. Resistance is guaranteed, Elena said. Institutional inertia is real. Changing how 4 different branches approach special operations will create significant friction. Richardson smiled, which is why I need someone who has already proven they can overcome institutional resistance. You stayed in the Navy when most people said you should retire. You developed a revolutionary framework when review boards kept rejecting your proposals. You led a mission that everyone said was impossible. You do not quit when people say no. Elena looked at her crutches leaning against the chair. 5 years ago, she had been told her career was over. Now the Secretary of Defense was offering her authority to reshape special operations across the entire military. The journey from broken warrior to strategic leader seemed impossible, but she had learned that impossible was just another problem to solve. Mr. Secretary, Elena said, if I accept this position, I have conditions. Name them, Richardson replied. First, I want quarterly rotations where I spend time embedded with operational teams, not observing from headquarters, actually in the field, seeing how tactics work in reality. Second, I want authority to bring in operators from all branches to serve temporary rotations on my staff. Not career Pentagon staff. Real warriors who can provide ground truth. Third, I want direct communication channels to team leaders in theater. No filters. No bureaucracy. Raw feedback on what is working and what is not. Richardson considered this. Granted on all 3 conditions. What else? I want the families of Master Chief Rivera, Senior Chief Takahashi, and Chief Petty Officer Williams to be informed that this task force exists because of lessons learned from Mogadishu. I want their sacrifice acknowledged as the foundation of this work. The Secretary nodded slowly. Done. Their names will be inscribed at the task force headquarters. Anything else? One more thing, Elena said. When I identify problems with current doctrine, when I recommend changes that make people uncomfortable, I need to know I have your backing. Not just political support. Active backing. People will resist. Some will try to undermine the work. I need to know you will stand behind the mission, even when it is politically inconvenient. Richardson extended his hand. Captain, you have my word. This task force exists to save lives. Anyone who stands in the way of that mission will answer to me personally. Elena shook his hand. Then I accept, Mr. Secretary. The meeting lasted another hour as Richardson outlined the administrative structure, budget allocations, and timeline for standing up the task force. Elena's head spun with the scope of responsibility. She would be shaping how thousands of operators approach their missions. The potential impact was staggering. After Richardson left, Morrison poured 2 glasses of whiskey and handed one to Elena. That conversation just changed the trajectory of special operation for the next 2 decades, he said. Or it crashes and burns when I cannot deliver, Elena replied. You will deliver, Morrison said with certainty. You always do. Rivera saw it. I see it. Now the Secretary of Defense sees it. The only person who seems to doubt you is you. Elena sipped the whiskey. Sir, I am about to tell some very senior officers that their beloved doctrines are obsolete. I am about to recommend changes that will upset decades of tradition. This is going to make me extremely unpopular in certain circles. Morrison smiled. Good. If everyone likes you, you are not pushing hard enough. Your job is not to make friends. Your job is to save lives. Focus on that and let the politics take care of themselves. That evening, Elena met with Shaw to brief him on the transition. They sat in the tactical development office, surrounded by the training materials they had built together over the past months. So you're leaving, Shaw said. It was not quite a question. I'm expanding, Elena corrected. This office, this training program, everything we built here becomes the model for what I do across all special operations branches. You will run the SEAL program. I will take what we learned and apply it everywhere. Shaw was quiet for a moment. Ma'am, I owe you everything. My career, my perspective, my understanding of what it means to be a warrior. I will not let you down. I know you will not, Elena said. You have already proven yourself. The question is whether you are ready to deal with the resistance. Some senior operators will fight these changes. They will say you are too young, too inexperienced, too influenced by unconventional thinking. Shaw smiled grimly. They said the same things about you, and you proved them wrong by saving hundreds of lives. I will do the same. Elena handed him a folder. These are the next 3 training iterations. Scenarios designed to challenge rigid thinking. Exercises that punish predictability. I want you to expand the program. Train more candidates. Develop more instructors. Make this the standard, not the exception. Consider it done, Shaw said. He paused. Ma'am, there is something I need to tell you. When I first saw you, when I mocked your crutches, I was not just being arrogant. I was scared. Elena looked up sharply. Scared of what? Scared of what you represented, Shaw admitted. You were proof that even the strongest warriors can be broken. That injury can end careers. That the things I relied on, my physical strength and speed, could be taken away in an instant. Dismissing you is easier than confronting that fear. And now? Elena asked. Now I understand that you are proof of something completely different, Shaw said. You are proof that warriors adapt. That value is not measured by physical capability alone. That the mind is the ultimate weapon. You did not let injury end your career. You let it transform your career into something more impactful than most operators achieve in a lifetime. Elena stood and extended her hand. Lieutenant Commander, this program is yours now. Make it something that would make Rivera proud. Shaw shook her hand firmly. I will, ma'am. I promise. Late that night, Elena sat in her quarters reviewing the organizational charts for the new Joint Task Force. Staff positions to fill. Liaison officers from each branch. Budget allocations. Headquarters locations. The bureaucratic machinery of creating something new within the military's rigid structure. Her phone buzzed with a message from Margaret Rivera. I heard about your promotion. Carlos would be so proud. You're taking the lessons learned from his sacrifice and using them to protect an entire generation of warriors. Thank you for honoring his memory this way. Elena typed a reply. Mrs. Rivera, your son's name will be the first one inscribed at the task force headquarters. His sacrifice is the foundation of everything we will accomplish. She set down her phone and looked at the photograph on her desk. 3 warriors who had died believing in her tactical judgment. 3 families who had forgiven her for surviving when their loved ones had not. 3 names that would now be attached to an organization dedicated to ensuring their deaths had taught lessons that kept saving lives. The Crutches leaned against the wall, silent witnesses to 5 years of adaptation and growth. Once symbols of limitation, they had become symbols of determination. Proof that warriors find ways to keep fighting no matter what obstacles they face. Tomorrow, she would begin building the task force, recruiting staff, establishing protocols, fighting the first of many battles against institutional resistance. But tonight, she allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. From Mogadishu to Yemen, from medical retirement to rear admiral, from broken warrior to leader of joint tactical innovation. The journey had been brutal and the cost had been high, but every step had been worth it. Because somewhere, right now, special operations teams were planning missions using frameworks she had developed. Operators were being trained in methods she had pioneered. Lives were being saved because someone had refused to accept that injury meant irrelevance. Rivera had been right. Her value was not in her legs, but in her mind. And that mind had just been given authority to reshape how America's elite warriors approached impossible missions. Elena Voss was ready for the challenge.